it's a fabulous entertainment.
That's very kind of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Russell?
Thank you.
I am grateful for your invitation. The organization I lead is called Joint Venture Silicon Valley, and I'm here simply to ask if you would consider investing in the organization. You are actually the only city on the peninsula, the only town, I should say, on the peninsula between San Francisco and San Jose that is not actually participating in the joint venture framework. And so I'm here to make an open invitation and ask you to join your counterpart cities. Why would you perhaps be interested to do that? Well, just a brief word on what Joint Venture Silicon Valley is. It is a framework for tackling regional issues. And as you well know, our region doesn't actually have any overarching framework for planning and decision making. So we try to bring together the region's cities, counties, agencies, and to provide that framework for discussion about the broad regional issues, our trends, our challenges. We're talking about things like transportation, housing, and land use, and but we're certainly talking about economic development, disaster planning, infrastructure, including communications infrastructure, all of those things. Not only do we bring cities, agencies, counties together, we also are a multi-sector organization. So the power and the strength of this is that we have actually the business community working with us, the heads of tech companies, in a wide swath of private sector entities are participating on the board of directors and in our committee structure and in our initiatives. Then in addition to the business community, we also have the participation of the labor community, the colleges and universities also participating, their presidents serving on the board of directors. So it really is like a United Nations, if you would, of the region coming together. And the mission is to think about our region's challenges, our trends, and then to mobilize to address them. Right now we're leading initiatives in the area of disaster planning, education and workforce training, sustainability. We have a large portfolio of energy and sustainability initiatives. Ms. Lewis also mentioned our Grand Boulevard initiative. That's specifically tackling El Camino Real and trying to think broadly about that arterial and how it can be an asset to our region and really reflect our region's dynamic profile. We have a full-blown initiative on our wireless communications infrastructure and broadband penetration, things like that. So that gives you a sense of what we're working on. I'll also tell you that the organization houses the Institute for Regional Studies, and we provide a steady stream of data and reports and analytical work that documents the region and how we're faring, including the publication every year of the Silicon Valley Index, which is a robust document and a website that tracks actually hundreds of indicators so that we always have that platform of data for the decision making and the deliberating that we do. So all of these things I think are of benefit to Atherton. I think the standard knee-jerk reaction is to say that Atherton is a different kind of community. It's a residential community, and so these are issues that might not be as central to Atherton. I would argue that Atherton is a citizen of the region and actually needs to have standing and stature in this way among its colleagues. So just so you know, your neighbors, Menlo Park provides $15,000 to the organization. Palo Alto provides $20,000 annually to the organization. Mountain View also $20,000. Redwood City $15,000. So it gives you a sense of the level of investment that other cities are making. We're here to ask you just to put your foot in the water and to give us whatever makes sense for the city of Atherton, just as long as it's a non-zero amount. And then that would make us all feel better, make us feel like we really are coming together as a region, all of us working on these problems together. So that's the sum of it. That's all I wanted to say. Happy to answer questions if you like.
Any questions? Observations? Russell, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group is an organization that does a lot of advocacy
Oh, yes.
and lobbying.
Yes.
Congress. Does Joint Venture Silicon Valley do anything like that?
We do not. We think of the leadership group as our sister organization, and they're terrific, and we have a tremendous amount of collaboration between us. But their mission is different. They're a business organization. They only have business members. They don't have public sector members. They don't have universities. And they are, as you said, an advocacy organization. So you'll find a leadership group going off to Washington and going off to Sacramento. And they are a 501c6 organization, and they will, in fact, lobby. They tend to go after the business issues, R&D tax credits, and workers' comp, and things like that. So our organization doesn't lobby, we're a 501c3. We're often in Sacramento or Washington, but usually in the role of giving expert testimony and commenting on our analytical work.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the council's information. We'll bring this back at the February meeting if you choose to.
Our next presentation, Sustainable Silicon Valley. Hi.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak tonight. I'm Cindy Clark. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Sustainable Silicon Valley, and I'm here with Jennifer Thompson, and she's our Associate Director. So in the next 5 minutes, we're going to go through a bunch of things. We're going to give you a quick update on SSV and talk to you a little bit about our partners. We're going to talk to you about our net positive mission, our projects, and then we also want to welcome the town of Atherton to partner with SSV. Most of the towns in the valley have. They're all contributing $1,000 each, with the exception of San Jose, which is at the $10,000 level. So these are our partners, and we're a collaborative organization. We get together with different partners to solve tough sustainability issues that can't be solved alone. So we have a lot of tech folks like Google and Microsoft and NASA, but then we also have other organizations like the water associations in the area. So our vision is to create a net positive Bay Area by 2050 in terms of water, carbon, and energy. And we have 3 projects. So the first is our Intelligent Water Reuse project, and it's to reduce our dependency on imported water. Right now we're importing 2/3 of our water, and we believe that climate change is going to make a much hotter and drier weather to make these sources much less dependable, and population growth also is really taxing our water. And so our mission is to ensure the Bay Area has a resilient water supply to enable continued success, but also a high quality of living for residents, businesses, and natural habitats. Our second project is the Energy Project, and this is over in East Palo Alto, where we're doing free energy audits, as well as water for low-income housing, which our goal is to install 25 solar panel systems there this year. We're also working on a solar installation at the Ecumenical Hunger Program. And finally, our carbon project's just getting off the ground. With the Paris Agreement on climate change, it's really motivated everyone to create really ambitious climate goals. And we feel we've got to really pick up the pace in reducing the carbon dioxide emissions. And we're collaborating right now with the Center for Carbon Renewal. And we're going to be working on a bunch of projects to mitigate carbon emissions. And that's it. So we really hope you guys would join us as a partner with us.
Anybody comments or questions?
You mentioned, thank you. You mentioned on the water use, which I applaud you for bringing that up, because most people like to ignore that. The population growth is a drain on the water. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with regards to that, or how you're...
Oh, look. Just in case you asked. Great question. So it's a 3-pronged approach. We're working on education, pilot projects, and ordinances. And what it does, it enables on-site individual systems. For, let's say it's a homeowner and they want to collect rainwater and use it for their garden. Or it's Facebook. We're working with them on a black water project. So when Menlo Park is saying to them, in 5 years our water supply is going to be even more limited, and they aren't attached to the purple pipe, they'll have their own black water system where they're taking toilet water and shower water, they're treating it, and then they're using it back in the facility for toilet flushing, and also for irrigation. And so it not just helps the tech community, but it helps the town, who also wants to grow. It takes way less water from the town. So, and again, it's all on buildings produce water, and 5 types of water, whether it's rainwater or all the way up to black water. And we want to reuse all these types of water and make a really big impact.
Just a quick question. If the town were a member of Sustainable Silicon Valley, are energy audits and water audits, are residents able to avail themselves of those?
Well, right now it's just for low-income housing in East Palo Alto. I'm not quite sure if many of your residents will qualify for that.
From my perspective, I get lots of your emails. You do a great job.
Thank you.
Of informing us, even though we're not members. So thank you for your presentation. Anybody else want to say anything? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'll leave this clicker here.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is open for public comments. This is the portion where anyone can address the council on matters that are not on the agenda. But, so how are we gonna do that?
It's not on the agenda, it's not on the agenda.
Okay. All right. We do have a member, I think, that was going to make a comment on something that is sort of on the agenda. Is that correct?
No, it's not on the agenda.
It's not? Okay, fine. All right.
It's been vetted.
Bill has advised me that I should stick to, hi, my name is Gary Lauder, and Bill has advised me I should only contain my comments to only things that are not on the agenda.
Good,
And,
okay.
and so, I have been a keen observer of this committee and that of the Transportation Committee. And something that I think should be a priority for both is to improve traffic flows in the town of Atherton, especially on the collectors and arterials, since that is the cause of the cut-through traffic, and the cut-through traffic is the cause of the need for the neighborhood traffic management program and so forth. And so everything that we seem to be focusing on is not about improving those flows, it's all about other stuff. And so if this committee could focus on that, that would be, rather, council could focus on it. And if you, also the Transportation Committee is not empowered to think of anything it wants to make a recommendation. It has to be asked by this committee. And so, I mean, council. So you might consider giving them a broader mandate to make suggestions without being asked for specific things, because I think we might be able to come up with some things that could help. I don't mean we, it.
Thank you.
I don't speak on behalf of that committee.
No. I might add that Gary Lauder is a resident of Atherton, and he has given several TED Talks on traffic issues, and so in lots of ways he's studied traffic issues and been knowledgeable enough that TED Talks have aired his analysis of it. So thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate you coming and within the limitations that you were given.
Thank you.
We'll consider that. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other members of the public like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'll go.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
if
sir.
I could make a comment.
Yes.
Many of you may not know, but Clarice Merrill, Frank's wife,
Yes.
passed away on Monday, and
Yes.
she was did a lot for the park as well as with her husband and the Park Foundation. So I would like to let everyone know that and you can reach out to Frank if you feel good about that. He's obviously devastated, but I thought I would
Thank you.
make the rest of us aware.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And then I'm sure everyone, and it was rather sudden. It was not.
She was being operated
It
on.
was, yes, it was, that was very sad. And we did lose another member of our Atherton community earlier, Bernie Magnuson, and that was in the newspaper, but that was a long illness. But it's very sad, so thank you for bringing that up. I was going to mention it later, but I appreciate that. So city attorney, no closed session, city manager's report.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, you have the written report. Staff and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from council regarding the city manager's report? I wanted to thank you very much for including the greenhouse gas article from the Baker study. It was quite interesting. I know that I brought that up saying that I had heard it on the radio, and it was, hysterically that Atherton was the top of the greenhouse gas emitters, but the way they analyzed it, it was, really,
Yeah, it kind of changed the way any additions to add?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that. It's actually gone really well, and Monica's done a great job meeting the officers out there on things that are both code enforcement and ordinance related, and putting their heads together and resolving it. And I think the construction industry that works out here likes her and respects her and listens to her, and I think that's a big part of it. So she's doing really well. We're very happy with Monica's performance.
She's attended Builders Roundtable, hasn't she?
Are you feeling that the value of her in closing cases, because I know that's, creating cases is one thing, closing cases and coming to some resolve, has it been, a benefit to the town? Because it's a new thing for us, so.
I think so. I think all of you realize sometimes the processes here are somewhat lengthy. It might take several months to get resolved, working with Bill and working with the town and also the homeowners. And we try to take the least intrusive way possible to deal with, getting these things resolved. But if we have to use more forceful methods, we don't hesitate. And the city attorney's been real helpful in that area too.
My perception is it seems a little daunting. There's 107 pending cases. I was wondering how many of these pending cases did she inherit for all these? Because she's been on board for about, 6 months, 9 months?
Yeah, a little long. Yeah, about
Almost a year.
almost a year. Yeah,
Wow.
it's more than 9 months.
Yeah.
Time flies when we're
I know. So, yeah. Anyway.
Oh,
Well, but some of the, understand, when she opens a file, a lot of times we'll collaborate on things, and she'll go back to, if it's a contractor that has a problem, she keeps the file open for months to make sure that, she can go back easily and say, oh no, you're not out of the woods yet. And so if she gives somebody 6 months of, close supervision, the case is gonna stay open. So it kind of, I think it's an unfair statistic to judge number open by number closed. She's closed a lot of cases that I thought were problematic and a little difficult, and she's used a lot of persuasion, and she hasn't gone out with a heavy hand and stuff. I think she's doing a pretty good job.
Well, I will say that Chief, I have gotten some very positive reports related to her and her effectiveness, and by reading your report and your commentary down at the bottom, it seems like she's a jack of all trades, and so we're not limiting her just to the enforcement concept. She's literally doing a little bit of everything, so.
She is, and she also has been filling in as CSO for Erica Johnson when she's not available, either doing court work. So she's really picked up a lot of the operations, not only at the police department, but just to point out, recently Brett Hale, who has retired, said that we're running about 400 to 500 open building permits, either remodels or constructions or new, whatever, and those generate code enforcement issues, workers,
Just by the nature of it.
hours, yeah, and so there's a lot going on in Atherton, so it keeps her pretty busy.
Okay,
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
That did, and I just had one more. Sorry, George. Cameras in the park. I noticed that we had some vandalism in the park, and I didn't know how effective our existing cameras are. And I know that I recently saw something about the expansion capabilities that we're moving into. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure, we have 2 cameras there now, right?
Yeah, we have 2 cameras, they're both backed by the Ball Diamond, and I think the vandalism you're talking about was not in that area, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to check. But the recommendation that I've made to George is that we move forward and expand that, because we've had window smashes in the parking lot where items have been stolen from cars. We have the preschool back there, and it'd be nice to have our dispatch be able to monitor that more closely, particularly at night when people drive in there. We don't have to wait until a resident says, hey, there's somebody in the park. We're gonna know that they're in the park. So we wanna cover the parking lots, the preschool parking lot, the 2 other parking lots, and then the entrance and the exit. So we
The
can
good
catch.
thing about that is monitoring. It's
Yeah.
not just a camera's out there to
Right.
catch for forensic, it's actually monitoring.
When will that?
We're coming back in mid-year for the expansion request.
So that, I think, is going to be a very positive thing, other than the fact that it's not going to chase dogs without leashes, but
No. Okay.
number one call in the park.
Anyone else?
informative one that I've read here, as well as ones that I've read at other agencies. So thank you for that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I want to echo that, because if he had not pulled it, I was going to make a comment, because in the presentation after the auditor, after Catherine said, you know, I do 19 jurisdictions, and this is by far and away the best audit that I've ever done, and this is the first time that Atherton's never had any kind of deficiency or any, and so we gave you a shout out, didn't
Right,
we?
you did.
Woo-hoo, Robert,
You did.
it was great,
Appreciate it.
so kudos to you and to all the staff, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that sentiment too. It's team effort and
Yeah.
staff, the rest of the departments, and George. So we have great staff here.
That's right.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Go on.
Thank you for
Okay, so on item 12, I did speak to George about that, and he did mention it in his letter today, in his update. But you know, bike lanes on El Camino still is an issue, and I know a lot of people would like to see bike lanes on El Camino. You know, I personally feel it's safer to do something closer to what Palo Alto has done. And when I spoke with George about it, he said, well, they'll look at whether or not they're on the study, whether or not it's feasible, that I should bring up that perhaps it may be worthwhile for us to consider either now or at a future time to have the bike group consider alternate routes similar to what we have on the west side of El Camino for the east side of El Camino, where people wouldn't have to be on El Camino, but they could come from, in addition to just on Middlefield, but come from Redwood City and get all the way down to Stanford and Palo Alto.
Maybe we should pull this and discuss it a little bit more.
Well, I thought we would pull it.
Well, I thought you said you had a comment on it. Yeah.
The comment was on 10, and I said wanted to have the discussion on 12. But okay.
I misunderstood.
Okay, no problem.
So
Consider it full.
let's consider that pulled, and we'll bring that back for more discussion, because I have some things that I wanted to say.
Okay, good.
Okay, so, any members of the public, want to make a comment or pull, any of the consent items number 8 through 13? Seeing none, I'll bring it back and call for a motion to, adopt items, 8, through 13, except for number 12.
So, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any abstentions? Any nays? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So, you want to bring that back now? Why don't we, since we're kind of into it, since you already said that, okay? With the safety with the council, we'll just go ahead and discuss that item number 12. So, my, looking at this, of course, I want to go forward with this complete streets. And I think that, what I want to point out is that El Camino Real is still very, very dangerous. If you look at, month of December, the police report, 25 incidents of total count incidences of 165 were on El Camino Real. 11 were on, Middlefield, 8 on Alameda, and 7 on, Atherton Avenue. So, it's, we need to address the, issue of El Camino in the complete streets, plan as it refers to bike and peds. I understand that if we try to do alternative bike routes, El Camino Real is actually a very straight shot for many people, and I think we will continue to use it. And it's very dangerous. Going from Redwood City to Menlo Park, day workers, laborers walk along there. They use their bike to get into the Atherton area and into Menlo Park to work at the restaurants, homes, etc. So I do want to make sure that we focus on the safety of El Camino and not just add alternative
in addition to doing this study as is identified, that we ask the bike ped group to work perhaps with a consultant as well, to find an alternative route also off of El Camino that might be safer, similar to what we've done that's on the west side, which actually gets to the Stanford Bike Bridge. This one would interface over to the Bryant Boulevard, Bike Boulevard, by going off on the side.
I think that,
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit. I think that, in all sense of safety, El Camino is El Camino, and I agree with Bill in the sense that we can't, and I also agree with the mayor in a confusing way of, yes, they're always gonna be there. But with that, I think that we have a responsibility to try to say, we can't stop you from going on El Camino Real, but there's an alternate route that just might be a little bit safer that we've carved through the city, that in essence, I don't wanna call it an endorsement pathway, but a way that parents may take that, okay, we don't wanna go on El Camino Real, what is the recommendation? Here's a pathway that weaves around the city and may connect into another safe path like Alma or something like that. Not precluding the fact that we shouldn't be considering the safety factors or adding the safety factors, but really primary route number one, you know, we'd probably say this way, weaving around it. El Camino is gonna be a route that a lot of the day workers and other people that would take the higher risk, if we might say it, because the higher speeds, it's just a fact. So I think we got a combination of both, but I think that, you know, creating another alternative, you know, is kind of a healthy way of saying, we can't stop you, but here's another way.
Yeah, I believe that, you know, we've got a big issue with regards to El Camino, and I think we need to move forward on this. I agree with Councilman Golden. Just feeling formal, Bill, I don't know. But that's a good idea to develop other paths. I think it's really important. I don't know how much money we put into that. I wouldn't want it to detract from other efforts here. But it seems to me a very important thing is that we communicate as we're doing that, because we may end up with some kind of comprehensive El Camino channel that works for bikes and works for others, and if so, it might obviate the need for the kind of thing Bill's talking about. But I do not feel at all comfortable in any way recommending or implying that it's safe for anybody to be riding their bicycle on the side of El Camino, and God forbid we put Sharrows or something on the side of that road. I just would feel horrific about it. You know, so I think it's a good idea to look at alternate routes, and I do think we need something on the east side of El Camino as well as what we've got on the west side.
so the other thing that I really want to stress is that whatever we do with the El Camino, I want to continue to work with our neighboring jurisdictions and to make sure that we don't do something in a vacuum, in a void. Menlo Park has spent tons and tons of money studying what to do with their El Camino portion, and Redwood City is continuing to work on that also. So, and I know that there is this section in here on page 3 of 7 that inclusive of neighboring jurisdictions. So I think that that's a great addition to this proposal. So, any other comments?
Probably not
suggestions?
necessary, but I completely underscore that's critical to anything we do in El Camino, is that it be consistent with what's going on both sides of this.
Yeah. Okay. City manager.
Just one comment along the lines of including the bike ped. There are two committees that the town has that I would submit would be involved in this process as it moves along. One is bike ped, the other is the transportation committee. They'll both have feedback into this as it moves along, because it covers both of their domains, so to speak. So if the council wants their input.
Transportation is on that bike ped.
Yeah, well, there you go. So if the council wants to make sure that that occurs, we'll make sure that those interfaces are occurring at the same time, and then bike ped can chime in with respect to alternate routes and feasibility.
So would we include that?
You don't need to
in this?
alter it at all, it's just a matter of
Okay.
process.
All right. So,
I think we should inform each of those committees that we're initiating a study of El Camino and ask for their input.
As it goes along, right?
As it goes along.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure how that will be broken down between those committees, but I think that we could defer to staff to manage that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
so just to be clear, what we're approving tonight is the
Scope of
scope of or RFP to go out for consultants. And how many consultants do you think will receive proposals from?
Hopefully we'll get 3.
3?
Yeah, I mean, historically, we haven't got a lot of proposals.
There's not that many.
Well, no, there is, but, they're just very busy,
Mhm.
and this may or may not interest them. So, but we broadly advertise it.
And then you staff will evaluate and do the weighted averages of the percentages of the skills, as you indicated, at the very back, 25% of this and that quality. And will that come back to council for final approval?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Once, staff makes a recommendation on the selection, we will then negotiate a very specific scope of work and fee, and then that will come back to council for review and
Okay.
approval.
All right. Is everyone comfortable with that? Can I get a motion to approve item number 12? And there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Carrie? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. On to item number 13, to adopt, say, 14. Oh, sorry. Yeah. There's just that mistake. Thank you. 14 is the consideration of participation in the Peninsula Advanced Energy Community PAEC project, not to be confused with PACE. If any of you were confused about that. Mike, are you going to take this?
Sure.
Or, because Joe's not here.
Yes, just very brief staff report, but this report, we are seeing if the council wants to approve the town of Atherton joining Menlo Park, Redwood City, and San Mateo County to form the Peninsula Advanced Energy Community and authorizing the mayor to sign a letter of commitment. The purpose of this partnership is to pursue a grant opportunity through the California Energy Commission. If successful, the town could be eligible for funding to conduct analysis and feasibility of sustainability features as part of the planning and design of the Civic Center. Participation in this partnership will also provide an opportunity for the town to compete for future construction grant funding. Participation in this partnership does not commit the town to include specific sustainability features as part of the Civic Center project. This evening also I want to let the council know that Craig Lewis, who's the executive director of the Clean Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization focused on the acceleration and utilization of renewable energy resources. And Clean Coalition is the nonprofit that will be taking the lead in putting this grant application together. And Mr. Lewis is here in the audience.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments from council before we open for public comment? Yes.
Just a quick question, Mike. As I understand it, this would commit us only really to putting the time to pursue, not even that, but potentially putting the time to pursue these grants. But there's no commitment beyond that, is that correct?
Correct, and really it's committing that the town will be part of this partnership along with Redwood City, Menlo Park, and San Mateo County in pursuit of this grant.
This one grant, the specific grant though.
At this point, yes.
How long will the partnership last?
Is that a question? How long will the partnership last?
2 years? 2 years.
2 years for phase 1, and then phase 2, which is a much larger granting opportunity, is an additional 2 years.
Anyone else?
Can we get an idea of what the pool of funds are for phase 1 and phase 2? And what is the pool, who's in the pool, who's swimming with this?
Great. Good evening. I'm Hayward Robinson. I'm working with Craig in the Clean Coalition. I also used to be on the Menlo Park.
Menlo Park Councilman.
Yes.
Mayor.
Been in this room up on that. I think we have 9 or 10 people crowded around there at some point trying to solve the high-speed rail problem. You guys have got that all solved, right?
Yeah.
Glad to hear it. I'll just preface by saying this is a really exciting opportunity. In 2011, the voters passed a small surcharge on every utility bill that goes to an investor-owned utility. And now some of that money is finally coming back to us. Phase 1 grants will be up to $1.5 million. We expect they're going to be we're guessing they'll probably award close to the maximum. The total pool of money is 4.5 for Northern California. There are also other pools of money that go to Southern California and disadvantaged communities. So I think the total pool of money is about 20 million for phase 1. Phase 2, which I believe is 5 years, is 8 million per award, and we expect that there'll be one of those made in Northern California and one in Southern California. And the only way to be eligible for the phase 2 is to be successful in phase 1. So.
Any other questions from council?
And how would the $1.5 million be divided up amongst the community?
Great question, and we are, as was mentioned, this is a coalition we're putting together, and it has to be. The CEC requires that at least one permitting agency be involved. A fair amount of focus in the effort is trying to grease the skids to getting these projects approved, break down regulatory and other barriers that are slowing things down. So we'll be looking at that, particularly with the county. A lot of our focus will be there, but it is important that we have agencies that are actually involved in the permitting side of this, as well as on other issues like financing. So we are anticipating, and I don't know if we'll be discussing with your staff whether the City of Atherton would like to be included in the budget. There's certainly, we're expecting that our partner agencies will want funds that can pay for staff time that would be devoted to this project. We are expecting that would be in the 100,000 or less range. If it goes over 100, there are certain triggers that happen. But we'd very much like to, it'll allow a closer work between the different entities and the Clean Coalition.
And with the 1.5 million in phase 1, would that be divided between Redwood City, Menlo Park, Atherton, and the county?
Well, and it's going to pay for, there'll be, one of our objectives with this is actually not to burden staff too much. One of the things we're hearing from some of the other cities, at least, you all are a little unique because you have this great project that fits just squarely with this, and it's like, this is a no-brainer. The other cities are more, well, this is great, we'd love to do it, our plate is already full. What don't you want me to do? And I heard that certainly when I was on the council many times. And so they're trying to figure out sometimes how this fits into their work plans. We point out that the money wouldn't arrive until summer at the earliest, so it really falls into next year's budget cycle. So we don't see taking this, I don't think the 1.5 is going to be divided. We're trying to be able to actually augment staff time with our resources and the resources of some of the consultants we're going to use.
I'm sorry, did you say the 1.5 million would not be divided?
Well, it's not going to be, we're not going to take 1.5 million and divide it by 4 and say, Menlo Park gets this amount. We're working on the budget right now, but a good bit of the work is to pay staff to carry out some of these efforts in planning, helping plan the energy systems for the Civic Center. In Menlo Park, we're considering planning, developing a community microgrid. Also, that's an idea. Emergency microgrid. We can talk about some of the technical details. Looking at solar solar siting opportunities.
So there's just add a little bit of color, because I've been Hayward. We were lucky to get Hayward on board here a couple of weeks ago, and now he's in charge. But I've had conversations with Joe the consultant that works for Mike. And what we've talked about for phase one is spending about $80,000 toward Atherton, toward money that Atherton would already be spending. Atherton's going to spend it anyway, but we would save Atherton from spending that $80,000. We would provide grant money for it in the form of doing the feasibility analysis on getting the natural gas out of the Civic Center project. That was something that was discussed at a recent council meeting, and one that there's not super perfect clarity on yet, so there needs to be more study. That study is going to cost some money, and we would allocate grant money to do that. Additionally, there is a feasibility analysis that needs to be done on the heat pump. If we're not going to bring natural gas, we need a different source of heating the building and heating the water. So there needs to be feasibility analysis on that. Those two analyses were estimated to cost about $80,000. That was an estimate that came from George and, excuse me, not George, from Joe and from
WRS.
yes. So that's money that we'll allocate from the grant that the town of Atherton won't have to spend. As Hayward said, if the allocation to any entity, whether it's a municipal entity or whether it's a subcontractor, any entity goes over $100,000, there's a huge accounting burden that falls on them. So almost all the partners that we're going to bring in are going to be at $100,000 or less. I would advise that for Atherton. If it's a money issue to be involved, we'll make it work for you. We'll get you up to $100,000, but at this point, we've looked at $80,000 for the first phase. If we are successful in the second phase, hopefully we'll get an $8 million grant for that phase. We will allocate a much bigger chunk to Atherton to help pay for some of the sustainability features for the Civic Center. And the one feature that we've talked about so far is to help pay for the solar facilities on the new Civic Center buildings. The other opportunity is a project that we call a solar emergency microgrid. The Clean Coalition does a lot of work with the city of Palo Alto. We've been recently hired by their Office of Emergency Services to put to design a solar emergency microgrid. And what that does is it ties the solar facilities with a battery system and allows for ongoing indefinite emergency backup power to critical facilities. So in the case of Palo Alto, the system is going to be at the Office of Emergency Services in the Cumberly Community Center, which is a converted high school. I mean, it essentially looks like a high school campus. And it's already got the solar in place, and we're going to put a battery system there. And then that battery, combined with the solar, will provide ongoing indefinite emergency power backup to the Office of Emergency Services, administrative offices, their emergency communication center that they have there, and the only emergency shelter that the city of Palo Alto has is at Cumberly Community Center. So we could look at doing the same thing here at the Civic Center in Atherton. The batteries are expensive, so we could potentially park some money for the solar and for the battery system. I talked a lot more than I expected to, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy.
That's never happened before.
Yeah.
It's complicated, but, and, this is kind of new information to us, so, thank you for explaining it. Again, the source of the money, is coming from that, utility tax? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a tax, but it's a small surcharge that's one man's tax is another man's fee, I guess.
It's called the public good charge. It's every unit of energy, a kilowatt hour of energy that you purchase from PG&E. PG&E.
And then it goes to the California Energy Commission is mandated by law to run this program and put this grant out.
All right.
So it comes through the California Energy Commission.
Okay.
And it comes from homeowners.
Okay.
Ratepayers.
Paying for your own grant.
In Atherton. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start with Rick.
Staff can certainly give you lots of information on this, but a significant piece of the Civic Center project that is not completed and that may fit right into what you're looking at is there's a separate analysis of the sustainability features, all of the different sustainability features in the Civic Center project, and what the return on investment will be for each of those features. That's a fairly costly analysis that WRNS is charged to do, and they haven't yet done. And that might fit very easily in and be included in both the two specifics that you mentioned, but it's a broader array of analysis of the sustainability for the entire Civic Center project, which, you know, we asked for, and our request may have gone beyond what was authorized in the original contract with them. So it could be very appropriate for this. So I suggest you talk to staff about that, and they can give you all the detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilmember DeGolia. I will say that I'm very glad that you brought that up, because one of the objectives of this Peninsula Advanced Energy Community is to do a lot of work at a high level, like that type of analysis, for example, that is applicable to any entity within our region and beyond, that's thinking about energy efficiency and fuel switching measures. Clean Coalition has done a lot of this kind of analysis for the city of Palo Alto, which they have their own utility. They already are carbon neutral, 100% renewables is their electric power source. Now they're trying to get the natural gas out, because natural gas inherently, you burn natural gas, you're creating emissions. So they want to convert to electric applications. We, as part of this Peninsula Advanced Energy Community grant, we already have budgeted in to do that exact analysis for every energy efficiency and fuel switching measure that you can, you know, at least the top priority ones. We're going to do that economic analysis. So we certainly don't want to pay for that twice, and we will talk with Mike and his team and make sure that we've got that potentially structured in as an allocation to Atherton to have however you all are planning on doing it, or we will potentially save the money from having you guys do it and just take it and do it through the pathway that we were already planning to do it.
So you obviously understand our scenario that the contributions we're getting from residents and donations it can have an effect on how we move forward related to what we put into the facility.
Sure.
So it seems like what you're saying in phase one, realistically, no risk. But moving on to phase two, say for example, we want a windmill, but we don't get the funding source for that windmill, which is something that we've probably said, well, unfortunately, we don't have the funds for that, and maybe our program falls short. What's the risk to Atherton, and what is the risk to the partners that we have, in essence, because aren't we in a limited partner agreement with the three other jurisdictions that you've got here? Is there any risk to them if we can't meet that, if we can't meet the component for fundraising for that windmill?
Great question. There's no risk whatsoever. There is no commitment that anything that we take into phase one, which is a feasibility phase, that there's no guarantee that anything is going to come out the back end of that. And what will happen is that through the 2-year feasibility phase, we will determine what's feasible. And what's feasible is what you all are willing to approve to move forward, and then we'll design that into the phase 2 proposal. But we've got 2 years to decide what's feasible and what will move forward and be proposed into the phase 2 proposal.
And I'll just add, I mean, the CEC in judging the phase 2 proposals is going to look at, is your financing in place? I mean, is this project at the end of phase 1 that you're proposing and you want $8 million of the CEC's money, or our money, to go with? Is it going to work? Are they willing to invest in that or not? And so they're going to be looking at, have you got other financing? Because $8 million isn't going to cover everything.
So I would take a guess that there's no risk to the other partners, the county and Menlo Park Redwood City. If we can't be the player, they basically take the additional money and say.
Well, again, we would have to, at the end of, halfway through or 3/4 of the way through phase 1, we're going to be looking at, okay, where are we at here? We've got a lot of lines in the water. Which one of those are going to come through and are going to make a compelling case for phase 2?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. For us, time is of the essence. I guess, you know, we're designing things now, and we're gonna have to make our decisions now, and we have to balance them with the savings. And if we don't see that the money is coming in for funding the operation one way or another, then, you know, we're making the decisions as was mentioned earlier, the trade-offs to say, well, maybe we're not gonna put this or this activity in there. And so, listening to the time frames, I guess I have a little bit of concern. I don't want to turn down any money, okay? Because I think what you're doing is a great opportunity for us. But we need to be making decisions in the next couple months. And then those decisions are kind of irreversible because, well, they're always reversible, but then we have to go back to redesign, and then you push out the construction project even longer, which then makes the cost higher. And so, if I have a concern, it's that concern that I think that we should have. Yeah, and so, I guess, so the question would be, you know, if there's a $80,000 defraying of our cost, you know, what's the time frame for getting approval for that and getting the funding for that? And then you may or may not, implementation, we may have to go back and redesign based on what we end up getting, because 2 years out, we're gonna be in construction.
Yeah, that's a
We'll be
great.
able to turn it around.
That's a great point, and it's one of the challenges that we've you know, that has arisen in the conversations with Joe and Mike. What we've agreed to do is to make sure that we can allocate $80,000 in this first phase that can be used by the town of Atherton, whether it's for the feasibility analyses that we've discussed already or something else towards this project. In terms of the phase 2, I think that if I understand it correctly, the solar facilities have not yet been, you know, the funding for the solar facilities has not yet been made. My anticipation is that making the buildings solar ready, not putting the solar on top, just making them solar ready is going to be, you know, pennies on the dollar for what the solar itself is going to cost. So given that we're still in fundraising, you know, we collectively are still in fundraising mode to get that solar paid for, I think 2 years from now will be pretty good timing to actually put the solar on top of the roof, and we can, you know, if Atherton gets 10%, even if it's only 10% of that phase 2 funding, we're still talking about something north of $500,000, which would be a big chunk of the cost of that solar facility, you know, to actually put it on the roof. So I think that there's a huge upside potential for the town of Atherton here. You're right to point out that there's some, you know, some trickiness here in the timing, and I know you're all on a very accelerated schedule for some of this initial feasibility. We'll do our best to make sure that the $80,000 that, you know, we want to allocate to the town of Atherton gets spent in a very productive way for the town of Atherton. But I think the bigger play here is to help pay for some of the actual implementation of the phase 2 features, sustainability features, like the solar is an easy one.
So if I could just have a follow on,
Sure.
just for clarification.
Yeah.
So the 80K is there now, and is the work, if it's the analysis or evaluation for the geothermal or whatever it is that work done by us, our design team, or your people in support of and with the specifications given
All of
to
the
you by
above.
design?
Well, I think to answer your specific question, the way that we've envisioned the $80,000 would be allocated directly to the town of Atherton. The town of Atherton can spend it on its own staff time, or it can hire subcontractors to do the work. Right now, it's anticipating to hire subcontractors to do that analysis, and it's essentially the architectural firm that is engaged to do that kind of.
So you don't give us $80,000 and then we spend it with you and you do the analysis, like similar to other government projects, like in the Defense Department?
That's not the anticipated path. We could do that analysis, we'd be happy to do it, that's not how it's been discussed. Right now, the anticipation is that Atherton will get the money and it will spend it with the consultants that it's already been working with.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
If council has no more questions, I'll open it up for public comments. If any members of the public want to make a comment on this item.
decision that we're not gonna put in sustainability features we can't afford, but we could make it solar ready. So to the extent that we don't have the funding for some of the solar and we're able to get it through a grant, terrific, that would only help us. And I think that it makes what we're doing more visible to the other local communities who are in this this clean coalition with us for the peninsula. I think that is only positive for us. So I think it's a really good thing. I very much appreciate that you came forward, Craig, and have pushed it and are making it happen. I think it's a good thing both for Atherton and for the South Peninsula.
Yeah, from my standpoint, and you said it's complicated, Madam Mayor. You're right. In some ways, it's complicated. In some ways, from where I'm sitting, it's not that complicated because it feels like there's an upside and not much of a downside.
Sounds too good to be true.
And well, no, but remember, we've got a fund sitting there that our residents contributed to, that we have the right to, or the ability to access. It's an opportune time for us as a community, and I think everyone would have to realize it's conceivable possible the timing wouldn't work out, and we would end up not being able to take certain funds, or that may be the end result at some point. But to me, that's not a big issue at this time. And, again, I think we've got a substantial upside, very little downside, and it's important that we continue to communicate and make sure that we follow these timelines. I would mention, by the way, as an aside, that we are also discussing Civic Center later in a meeting if you choose to stick around.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members comment on this?
No, it was great.
Okay, so shall we call for approval to have this letter be formalized? That's in your agenda packet as it's written and signed by the mayor. Yes, sir?
Can I just?
Yes.
In order to, we've learned a little bit about since we created that draft letter with Mike's team, there's a few little things that need to change. So I just want to be clear that like the header and just the way it's formatted needs to change. So that.
I don't have any header online.
It's not a letterhead.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. So there's just a couple little things.
It's a concept letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what they're voting on.
Any changes will not be substantive?
Correct.
Okay. And so, you made the motion?
Yeah, moves off the rest.
And Rick will second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
There you go. Motion passed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hayward, good to see you again.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great for you to be here. Thank you, Craig. All right. Moving on to item number 15, which is to affirm the concept for bids for Marsh Road retaining wall repair. The Vice Mayor pointed out to me that the cover staff report says it is on the consent agenda. So everybody just kind of cross that out. Well, he's detailed, he's an attorney. Okay, so this is very exciting, Mike.
And he's got other exciting news.
Well, I have a little question mark on the policy implications. I mean, go ahead.
Well, just briefly, the purpose is to just, affirm the existing design, which is environmentally cleared and now permitted, which calls for constructing a new U-shaped reinforced concrete channel designed to accommodate a future deck, but without a future deck at this point. And the good news is that last week we received our permit from the Regional Water Control Board, and then just a few hours ago we received an email from the Corps of Engineers that we're good to go on their permit. So at this point now, in fact, we've already given the information to our consultants, who can now finalize the plans and specs to incorporate the conditions of the State Water Quality Control Board permit, which is very minor and typical. So there wasn't anything in there that is going to cause any major design or cost issues. So with that, we'll be going out to bid very soon.
Any
condition of the channel may have changed since that, since the several crashes have gone in, and I was gonna ask the question if, in fact, George knows the answer, or Mike knows the answer. Is that something that we have to look at, and have we recovered the cost of everybody jumping into the creek or the channel? I don't think anybody jumped.
Well,
They lurched.
Lurched.
I checked with Robert maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think Robert, hasn't most of the people paid whatever the cost of fixing the fence and stuff?
Yes, we've submitted claims, and we've received money for, I believe, not the recent one, but the previous 2.
I can hear the current, there's a time lag before they pay, but their insurance companies run with it.
In terms of the condition of the channel, it's not gonna be there. It's gonna be-
It hasn't changed. I'm just very appreciative that, one, we're following up with these people that tend to wanna be in the channel without permission. And that we're, being responsible enough to collect the funds to make sure we can do that adequate repair and contribute towards the channel. Thank you for everybody, and everybody for monitoring that.
Any other council comments, questions? I just want to ask, so again, with all these new approvals, when would be the track or the schedule of deconstruction, reconstruction?
Well, yes, what we want to do is to get the plans and specs finalized very quickly, get it out to bid very quickly, because we want to award the bid hopefully by the mid-March timeframe. Because provided that the channel is dry, basically the window that we have to work in the channel is, March 15th to October 15th.
Okay.
so could I
Maybe
make
this year.
a comment though, is that the Recology audit, which affects our trash rates, occurs from mid-April to mid-May. And it would be devastating to our rates if we have that road shut down during that period of time when they're actually running the audit to determine how many man-hours go into servicing Atherton. I spoke with the city manager about that on Tuesday, and I think care needs to be taken so that we have, we don't impact our rates unnecessarily and have to have a major jump in our rates. We might be able to work with Recology to refine our audit from, say, the middle of April to the end of April, but they do run that audit in the jurisdictions for over that 4-week period. And that's set in our contract, and so we can't change that, but we might be able to influence it. But it'd be very, with backups and things like that, with the trucks going back and forth, our rates would go through the roof.
Is that every year?
Every year they do that.
We'll make sure we touch base and coordinate for that, and only do it when Redwood City's audit's going on.
Well,
Just kidding, but yes, we'll coordinate.
Well, yeah, and the reality there is that we would want to time coordinate it so that the audit is complete before we start construction. Because once we start construction, that lane is going to be closed down to 1 lane, and for parts of the construction, the entire roadway is going to be closed. So,
Yeah, so I just want to make everybody aware and have you consider that into your planning. I mean, I realize that they're going to be cleaning out and getting things ready inside the channel, and that won't take as much time. But once they're doing the construction and deconstruction, they're going to have that road shut down, and that's going to have a major impact on not only ours but everybody around us.
So the other, if I could just interject, the other consideration is, as you know, the Willow Road overpass is scheduled, and I think that they've moved that up to this spring for the beginning of that. So we should double check with CCAG, Sandy Wong. I can follow up on that, or we can check with that about exactly when they have moved that for the major Willow Road intersection at Overchange. It's going to be, like Burlingame. So are there any public comments, having Sorry.
Just a quick
about
question.
that.
No, 'cause it follows up. I hadn't focused or hadn't realized until Mike just mentioned that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have that entire road closed and one lane closed for a longer period of time. I know it's early in the process. Have you got any estimate of, are we talking about days, weeks, months?
Probably talking, well, until we get a low bidder, until we get their schedule, but, you know, based on, our consulting engineers' design and what they believe, you know, we believe that this, from start to finish, this is about a 3 to 3.5 month project. So for that 3 to 3.5 months, I think we pretty much can expect Marsh Road to be down to one lane. And then for periods of time, it being closed altogether. And that's something that we need to work with the contractor because there's kind of pros and cons. The longer we allow total closure, the quicker they can get it done. So, you know, but until, again, we have a low bidder and we work with them to see how they envision, you know, constructing the project, then we'll figure out the specifics on traffic control.
And we are aware of, you know, the neighbors in the area, sensitivity to that, as well as Holbrook Lane. Residents have already contacted us and talked about, you know, hey, traffic's gonna be diverted down our street, so we gotta figure that out.
But I did think to put this, maybe putting this in perspective, it is gonna be an impact, but it's gonna be a scheduled one versus an unscheduled one, which would happen if nothing is done and there's a failure.
And we're also making sure that if there's any other work that needs to be done on Marsh Road during this time, if they need to rip it up for anything else, it would do that at the same time. So we don't finish this and 2 months later it's being ripped up for some other purpose.
Good idea. Good point. Okay.
And I'm sorry, Mike, when you mentioned it, did you say that the closure is going to occur for the entire duration, or are they going to segmentally close, you know, for periods, or not? They're going to be working in the channel. Do they have to have the roadway closed for 3 months?
What we believe is that pretty much for the entire length of construction, one of the, you know, Marsh Road is gonna go down to one lane
With flaggers.
with flaggers.
With flaggers.
Traffic control back and forth.
They're gonna have equipment that they're gonna be going over the edge down
Yeah.
into the channel, and that
Yeah.
equipment's gonna be in that lane of traffic,
Mhm.
so it's gonna be shut down.
So I would say at the same time, it sounds like communication is going to be a key thing, but also the notification to the fire department, because that is a primary response route.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Towards our favorite campus.
Yes, sir.
Will there be a resurfacing requirement for Marsh Road as a result of the construction, do you know?
I can't remember if that's part of the plans.
That heavy equipment's gonna damage that lane for sure.
One thing I guess that they're, you know, we'll see what's happening with Atherton Fiber. I'm not sure that has any direct impact, but to the Vice Mayor's point, if there's gonna be any work done, I'm not sure that's gonna apply to them, but we should look at it.
Mhm.
Right.
And if the road's gonna be ripped up, we should at least look at putting in conduit like we talked about doing.
So now that this project is staring us in the face, we're going, oh my goodness, what are we doing? But we have been working on this project for years and years and years and years, and something has to be done because the latest wreck that went into the channel damaged the wall of the interior of the channel. And when we walked the channel, it was already damaged, yes, you know.
It didn't make it any better.
No, so, okay, I'm gonna open up public comment and see if anyone wants to make a comment about the Marsh Road channel. Ms. Valerie?
So, I want to congratulate you on finally getting to this point, because I know it's been a long time. And having walked that channel, it really needs it. I also live near the channel, and I don't know how many of you take Marsh Road, but it is a mess in the mornings. I have commuted to get my kids to school past that Marsh Road intersection almost every day of my life. And I recommend that you think about a predictable schedule of traffic direction, because the cars come off the highway and flood into the town in the morning, and then they flood out of the town in the evening. And I don't think you should have a flag control changing the direction. It's a one lane. It's very hard to go that whole distance and then wait for those cars to stop and then wait and then do this. I think that would be insanity. So I think you should have a morning inbound and evening outbound, and maybe flag control in the middle, but perhaps do a little community, outreach about what they think should be best, because this is a really crazy intersection in terms of the amount of traffic volume. And then the final thing I want to say is that I'm hoping that as part of this and wrapping up this project that we move ahead with talking about a more riparian part of the channel around Watkins, and I'm wondering if you have put that onto the agenda, if that's coming up next, because in exchange for this channeling for the cement channel of Marsh Road, I think we need to look at more absorptive and riparian work to be done on the portion of the channel that's along Holbrook Palmer Park. Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Yes, Gary.
I just want to add emphasis to what you brought up before about the 101 and Willow interchange. If that is closed down at the same time that you're doing the Marsh Road thing, half of the traffic that would have gone across Willow will be diverted to University and half will be diverted to Marsh. And so that would be really bad if they coincided. And also just FYI, in the environmental impact statement for that interchange, they did not they looked at the impact on dinosaur bones, Indian burial grounds, butterflies. They didn't look at the impact on Atherton and Marsh and Menlo Park residents who are, for example, coming home in the evening on 101 North. Right now they have a separate exit to go west on Willow. After the change, they would all have to wait in the same queue to exit on Willow Road to go east or west. And right now that queue is a mile long, extending back to University. And I just thought this might be of general interest.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's daunting, it's staggering.
Yeah, they'll be making it like Marsh Road, which is a partial cloverleaf.
Exactly.
Not materially better from
And we will check with, actually, for that project, Menlo Park is the lead agency. CK is the primary funding source.
Right.
So, we will contact Menlo Park to see what the schedule is.
Okay. Good. Yes, sir.
Did we make any consideration for maybe a night project? I mean, I would think that we could with reasonable light. I mean, I'm wondering that if that is something we should be looking at.
Yes, we would know.
Well, very good calls. But that being said, I guess because of all these other impacts, it seems like maybe the path of least resistance is to see if we have the ability to do a night project with some limitations, because once commute traffic is done, that area pretty much gets quiet. And I mean, realistically, I'm not saying an all-night project first thing in the morning, but maybe we could come up with some reasonable hours after commute to work till X. I mean, I would rather see a longer duration, but less impact as far as commuters are concerned, with a night project.
Might be something to consider.
That's
Yes.
huge.
Yeah, it
And
is.
before we actually do that, I'd like to see more nodding of heads.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Wait, I'm not sure it's a good idea. My understanding of the way that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that lane is gonna be filled up, not with just cars of people who are working there, but
Right.
there's gonna be equipment in that lane
That's not gonna
managing
move.
all kinds of stuff going over the wall of the channel, and that equipment's going to be there 24 hours a day
Yeah.
for the entire duration of the construction. It's not just gonna come in during those hours that people work. Now, if I'm wrong, then that could be a solution, but if I'm right, then it doesn't matter whether it's day or night. If that lane's blocked, it's blocked.
And at this point, I don't know if you're right or wrong, because that, again, that's, really how what the contractor's gonna come up with.
But if you're working 12 or 18 hours a day versus you're working 6 or 8 hours a day, you're gonna get it done faster. So I think that, we need to minimize the hurt, okay, and minimize the impact to the traffic as well as to the residents. But we need to minimize, the shutdown of that street, because it's gonna be a big impact on the region, not just Atherton, not just Knox Road.
I also, I hear what Councilman Goliath was saying, but the reality is that if there's equipment and trucks that need to be moved, they get moved. I mean, that's all there is to it. You know, it's not a stationary, we can make that a condition. But secondarily, there is enough space there to do the minimum width of roadway for lanes up until a choking point, okay, when utilizing some of the shoulder area and minimizing the amount of closure area to, that path where the roadway narrows into. Of course, we're gonna have to do some reduction there and say that's gonna be lane control, but we don't have to reduce it from A to B. So, but I'm just trying to think of alternatives because of impacts.
I was just say, it seems very clear the goal is to mitigate as much as possible the impact on traffic. And if, I don't think we're expert in that, and I don't think we should be expert in that, but hopefully we get the right people who are experts in that. And the idea is that if to do that, the equipment stays there, then it sounds like what people are interested in, let's work as many hours as possibly can while the equipment's there to make the lane closed for as few days as possible. And if we can converse with the equipment in and out, let's at least consider the possibility of doing it at night.
Is that something that everyone can get behind? Okay.
By the way, with some cost implications.
Yes,
Some cost implications. So that's,
yeah, sure.
All right. So, we're good? And we're affirming it.
That needs a motion.
So I'd like to get a motion to affirm the request for bids for Marsh Road retaining wall project.
I would like to make a motion that we affirm our request for bids.
Okay, a motion and a second from Rick DeGoya. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? We have a green light. Let's go, Mike. Let's make this work. Great. Yeah. Okay.
I would just note before we leave that when we had the mayors and city managers meeting between Atherton and Menlo Park last year, the issue of the closure on Marsh Road and the potential project on Willow was brought up. So they were made aware of it at that time. At that time, they did not have the funding to do the Willow project. In fact, it had been completely stopped. So I don't know what stage that's at now, but I definitely think they should know so they can manage their project around this one because this has been going along.
Okay. Okay. We'll find out about that. Okay, so item number 16 is regarding the giving direction regarding preparation of the request for a proposal for preliminary design services to determine feasibility and cost to construct a roundabout at the intersection of Atherton Avenue and Alameda de los Cobos. Mike, you're up on this one to give a
And actually, I don't really have any additional information than what's in your report,
okay.
but we have to answer any questions the council has.
Okay. Bring it back to council for any comment or clarifying questions from the staff report to staff. Yes.
And actually a very specific question on the vehicle count numbers, which are really striking. And I just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples instead of striking because they've actually gone down since 2000 in the last 15 years, and that just is completely counterintuitive to me. Yes, any wisdom to impart, Michael?
Well, no, other than, these are the results we got. They were all 24-hour, all directional counts. So these are, total traffic counts.
And I have a question about it too. How does that compare to the 38,500 vehicle count on El Camino that you provided in the previous report?
Because El Camino, previously the town has not gotten counts, on El Camino, so we don't have counts to compare to. Counts going back to 2000.
Oh, I understand. But the current count, you used the figure 38,500.
Yes.
And is that a 24-hour
Yes.
two-way count? So that number is comparable to the 14,185 number on Alameda. That's an apples-to-apples comparison, it sounds like, which frankly is surprising.
I agree. You said El Camino be higher?
Way higher.
Yeah, I agree.
So when you mentioned counts, Mike, that's total counts through the intersection, not giving us a breakdown of counts going east, west, north, south?
And actually, the counts that I have in the report is actually is not at the intersection. It's basically between Walsh and Atherton. But your question, as far as we did take counts on Atherton at the same time, and Atherton Avenue near Alameda, the traffic count was about 6,500 cars. And 60 at on Atherton near Alameda. So that doesn't count. So we didn't count. I can't remember the street on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. So we didn't get counts on that, but.
So Mike, when we did this count, did we have any idea, I get volume, but any time durations? So
we do have that information. I don't have it with me, but when they do the counts, it is by hour. So we do have a breakdown by hour.
Okay.
So if we finish just asking clarifying questions about the number of vehicles, can I open it to public comment on this item before bringing it back to council for more comment and discussion?
So, I recently was pleased to find that Stanford implemented a roundabout at a very busy intersection on the campus leading to the faculty club where I pass frequently getting to the Coho, and it's a lovely roundabout. It took them, quite a while to finish it, but it's interesting to me because in my half a dozen experiences of that roundabout, people did not know how to use it. And it was interesting experience because I came out of having traveled in Israel where almost every intersection is a roundabout and everybody uses it and the traffic is zip, 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 zip. And here, traffic is like, who's doing what and how do you do it? And I think that when I experienced this with my daughter driving, I realized that in this country, if we don't know how to do roundabouts, we are in deep trouble when we go to Europe. So I really recommend that we think about a roundabout because as a way to educate drivers about it, it's a critical educational skill, let alone traffic flow, let alone safety. If you don't know how to do a roundabout, you're going to be in big trouble in Europe. So that's one thing, but I also think that it's an amazingly useful tool for some of the intersections in Atherton where we do not want to install traffic lights and where the stop traffic is just way too slow. So I totally am supporting this, and I think it's important for all of our kids and every driver in the area to get some roundabout practice, and we need more of roundabouts in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this? Seeing none, I'll bring back to council for further and deeper discussion on this. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I guess there was, I think, in this document, you mentioned the Alameda School District was considering, or the Los Lomitas School District was considering, or the residents down there were considering a stoplight at Walsh Road. Is that?
Yes, the Los Lomitas School District, apparently they recently passed a bond issue, so now they have funding to make improvements. One of the improvements they identified is to basically reconfigure their parking lot at their school and to align the entrance to the parking lot with Walsh Road and then to signalize that intersection. We've had some very brief initial conversations with the school district, and we've provided them with additional studies that we'd like them to do before we can say that this is a good idea or not a good idea. But yes, that is a project that Los Lomitas has identified.
So if we were to look into a roundabout or other signal at this intersection, would we also be considering if that had gone through what that will do to the traffic?
Yes, in fact, one of the requests that we made of them is for them to do a warrant study for a traffic signal at Alameda and Atherton, because we think that if they're going to be signalizing their driveway at Walsh, that we need to take a look at what happens at Atherton and Alameda.
All right, and then one last question. It looked like from the picture, although it was difficult to see, the way you've drawn this as opposed to having a mini roundabout, which may or may not work. This is a larger roundabout. It looks like we would be having to acquire property and or rebuild neighbors' walls and things like that. Do you know about how much property we would have to pull from the two neighbors that it looks like we're going on, and what the cost of that might be?
No, I mean, what we did was, again, because we had recent topographic and property information, we developed a computer-generated conventional roundabout at that location. Based on that, it appears that additional right-of-way is going to be needed. Exactly how much, we don't know, and that's, you know, we don't want to speculate on that, and so that's why the recommendation is to, if the council is interested, to hire a consultant to really take a look at that.
And the consultant would also look at a smaller roundabout, because, you know, there are many roundabouts that are just, you know, a couple of bricks in the round, and they're, you know, having lived in England, there's also ones that just have a dot that's painted about this big. So they're gonna look at all that?
They are going to be looking at a conventional roundabout and a mini roundabout. So.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Well,
Questions?
actually, I had a question.
Yes.
In your staff report, you said that from your staff review, that the conventional roundabout would require minor right-of-way acquisition at the northeast quadrant. If I look at this, that looks wrong to me. It looks like it's probably
So-
the west quadrant.
I think that one of the purposes of what we're looking at now is not to approve what has been schematically drawn. I think is to say, this is the concept, let's approve a consultant who would do a more detailed and more accurate and would answer those questions for you at this time.
Okay, so let me just say, in that context, what I would like to approve is not just to take a hard and fast conventional roundabout and mini roundabout, but if we're gonna hire somebody to look at it, I'd like them to look at what the size of the roundabout could be without taking that property, because it comes very close to the property line. I understand this is a very preliminary review, and they do a much more systematic review, but I don't want to spend a lot of money for them to go into the analysis of how much it's going to cost if you do this conventional roundabout that is X number of feet in the middle, when you could make it X minus 1 and you wouldn't have that problem.
Exactly.
I wouldn't.
So, okay,
Just, Madam Mayor, Commissioner
yes,
Dolan,
yeah.
understand that whatever they come back with has to meet Caltrans standards
Right.
for traffic devices, and has to meet the fire department standard for taking a big long fire truck with a ladder on the back of it through it. So even a foot or two may throw off these
Yes.
other devices and make them where they're, any accident that happened after that, we're the insurance company.
And of course, and so that would all be.
That's a problem. It's certainly worth
So
looking
the
at what they
step
can come
that
up
they
with.
would have to do it within the bounds of regulatory requirements. So, Carrie, did you want to say something?
This is my favorite topic for the evening, but I do want to say,
It's only because you drive it every day, right?
This
You don't
is-
drive it, maybe you should recuse yourself.
I should
What do you
probably
think?
recuse myself
Hey,
because
wait,
of
let's raise
the
it.
contribution of the volume of traffic I get to this intersection. But it's an intersection that I actually know real well. And so there are a few things that I think are missing out of the staff report, and that is, what is the problem? What are we trying to solve? Because if we're trying to solve volume of traffic that's in that intersection 24 hours a day or a limited time frame, then I think that this staff report should be identifying the volume of traffic going through that intersection at the time frame, and which traffic, is it north to south, east to west? What are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve a traffic problem that exists that would primarily be Atherton residents trying to commute through an area? Or are we trying to control a route that is maintained by the town of Atherton that is becoming an expressway or something along the lines of volume of traffic going north to south through the town of Atherton. So that's point number one. Because I know that that intersection, the volume of traffic in that intersection is primarily north to traffic volume, and that is to solve a problem that is going east to west. It is concerning to me that we're trying to increase traffic flow that goes between two schools, an elementary school that is going to have a higher number of students, and a high school that is going to have a higher number of students. So we're going to promote more traffic to jump up on Alameda, which, by the way, the town of Atherton maintains that roadway, not the state of California. And I believe that our interest would be to have more commuters go through El Camino, which is a state mandated roadway, and not promote traffic to go quicker and faster through Atherton for whatever means, the taxpayers. And I am on that side of Atherton. So let's talk about another problem that this roundabout would create. Because we haven't identified the timeframes that the intersection exists and has a problem, one of the other problems that by creating a roundabout that's going to allow more north to south flowing traffic is you're going to have people that are now going in a direction of east to west through that intersection and making the right-hand turn, wait till hell freezes over to get through that roundabout to make the right turn, because we can go to that intersection today during commute and watch how courteous people are with the people trying to make the right turn with a stop sign and see how the traffic flow, because it does back all the way up into that intersection from Woodside Road. So it's very problematic to make a decision about an intersection. Now, if this intersection was Stockbridge and Alameda, I might look at it a little differently because we'd actually slow the traffic volume, because it would be something that doesn't exist as far as a four-way controlled intersection, which is, by the way, the primary route for residents that are in that western section in the horseshoe to get out safely, period. From Fletcher, you can talk about the corner house on Fletcher that will drive all the way around to the safety point. Now, when residents of Atherton decide that they want to get out during commute, and people that are in the chicane, if you want to call it that, the roundabout will not let them in, then we have another problem. So we're going to have more residents complain that they can't get in during commute hours. Every other hour, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just that peak hour that we're trying to deal with both morning traffic and evening traffic. So to me, knowing the intersection the way I do and making a decision on this, if this was Stockbridge, I consider it differently, because it actually slow people down, because like Valerie had mentioned, they're not going to be used to it, and if it was in the middle of the roadway, it might slow them down before the high school. But this is not there, and the problem of addressing the impact of the light that's going to occur, because they're trying to get their people out on Alameda. By the way, that's why they're putting the light in, not to increase flow, but actually to get across the road. So that's another problem, but they're identifying exactly what the problem is. The flow during peak hours, school gets out, they can't get out, or they are going in the morning. I don't think the roundabout's going to solve the problem. I think it's going to create other problems that we're not even looking at, and it's solving a problem that truly isn't majority of Atherton. It's a cut-through issue, and so if we could push them to Atherton, or better yet, let's create a toll road.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, so,
That will pay for the maintenance and everything of the roadway.
Vice Mayor, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I could go a couple of, and I do hear what Carrie's saying, but I've also heard from residents that this is an issue, and the issue that is most often raised to me is north-south during commute hours. And what's out there now, it's been out there for a long time, and I was struck that apparently numbers are lower now than they were 15 years ago with car traffic, which again, it doesn't feel right to me.
Doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, you know,
It
but
could be an anomaly.
there's something going on
Somebody
there.
unplugged the thing, I don't know.
But anyway, so I have had people raise that issue. I'm not sure that this is gonna solve all these problems, but I don't think that's the issue before us right now. The issue before us right now is let's get somebody to look at it and see if it'll help with that issue. And it seems to me at this point our commitment is really money, somewhere, or not even that. It's putting out an RFP and then getting out an answer. We're anticipating it being somewhere $25,000 to $30,000 when we look at it then. So I'm not at the end result of this, but let's get some more information and see if it's helpful to us.
Okay. So, I understand your feelings about it, and that's well said and well taken. I want to bring to the council some input from a resident who lives on Walsh Road, Steve Nosheim, who's emailed me earlier that suggested that rather than having a stoplight, if Atherton can have a look at the Los Olidas proposal to put the stoplight at Walsh Road, and maybe he has a vested interest because he lives on Walsh Road, but he feels that if it was at the El Camino Lago intersection, just at the corner of Los Olidas School, that it would probably be more effective, and then it would be further up, and then it would not have the same stacking potential or impact onto the Atherton Alameda intersection. We're all talking about this as if we know what we're talking about, and we don't. I have to tell you that as long as I can remember, we have been talking about a roundabout at this intersection. I was on Transportation Committee in 2008, 2009, and we were talking about it then with the same wild estimations and feelings and projections of our own personal experiences. I really think we're at a point right now where we need to get an expert. I appreciate you putting the little graphic together, Mike, but it's not a perfect scenario. And, Mike is a traffic consultant, but he is not the traffic consultant that we need to analyze this situation. And I think that if we do hire this, go out and get a request for proposal, put out that the scope of the work has to be not just at Atherton Avenue, Alameda intersection. It has to look at, I think, from Valparaiso all the way down, maybe into the school, or maybe even to Woodside Road, or to Stockbridge, the global specter of the Alameda traffic flow and how that can be managed better. Agree that at peak commute hours, it is a mess. But I find I've been going up there, and it seems like there's always traffic up there. So the consultant may say, there's no way that we can do a roundabout that will, solve what the problem that you're wanting to solve. And he might say, you need a stoplight or something. But I think that with that idea in mind, give us the analysis of what a roundabout, the least intrusive, but the absolute legally compliant for fire, emergency, not taking, of property, those would have to be within the specs that we would want staff to put in the RFP. So I would like very much to move forward on approving this request to prepare the RFP process by staff for $3,000, and then the anticipated consultant cost to perform the feasibility analysis is $25,000 to $35,000. So that's what I'd like to call for a motion for.
Well, I'd like to ask a question before we vote.
Okay?
So when I read the request for proposal, I just want to make sure I understand it. It's going to include an analysis as to whether or not it'd be better to have a signal there that perhaps could be programmed to just be
During peak hours.
working during peak hours, because the first thing is a warrant analysis for a signal light. It's not just the analysis for a roundabout, because all we're talking about is a roundabout. But when I read this thing, and when we first brought this up last year, one of the times it was brought up, we talked about, would a traffic light be actually make the traffic flow better, and be fair to both ends, all four people on the intersection.
Okay, so to clarify, the reason for the traffic signal warrant analysis. It isn't really to evaluate whether or not a traffic signal or a roundabout is going to be a better device. Where this is coming from is a roundabout plays the same role as a signal, okay? You would put in a roundabout where you would normally require a signal. So that's why I included the traffic signal analysis, because question one is, should that intersection even be signalized, whether it's a conventional traffic signal or a roundabout? Because again, the roundabout and a traffic signal serve the same purpose, okay?
But when would there be the discussion on whether or not we should go forward with a roundabout? We say we need something there because the stop signs aren't cutting it.
Right.
So do we want to put a roundabout in, and this is the cost for that, or do we think actually traffic would flow better with a signal?
That's what the
Yeah,
consultant would give,
that
that's what
would-
the consultant
that
would
would
give,
come back to
this
the-
analysis and recommendations.
Well, that's what I was just asking.
And
You
then
said no.
Well, no, and then also to make sure that geometrically, whether or not a roundabout works, because again, it needs to be designed so that it can operate as a roundabout and also allow for, large vehicles, commercial vehicles, emergency response vehicles to pass through. And then the other thing that from a traffic analysis standpoint, the reason why I'm interested in that is partly because of what Councilmember, Weiss indicated, is that, so first of all, is there a problem? In staff's opinion, there is no problem. That in fact, in our staff report, the first sentence in the analysis says, from the standpoint of traffic operations and safety, staff does not have concerns regarding the current operations of that intersection. So from a staff perspective, we don't think there's a problem. So the purpose of this, from my perspective, isn't to solve a problem. It's really to evaluate, will a roundabout fit? And from a traffic operations standpoint, what effect would it have? And the effect that I would be most interested in is during those peak times, the positive effect is the long queues on Alameda, to me, they're going to go away. Because the roundabout's going to provide a continuous flow of traffic through that intersection. The operational analysis that I'm interested in is for the 6,500 cars on Atherton. When you have a continuous stream of cars going on Alameda, will there be adequate gaps for them to get out? And I don't know how long that has been a four-way stop-controlled intersection, but the sense I have is that it was implemented to provide people who are traveling on Atherton and the other street so they can turn left during the peak times. So that's really the operational analysis that I'm interested in getting so that we can inform the council that yes, a roundabout is going to create much better flow on Alameda, but the impact will be whatever it will be, so that the council has that information, so you can decide whether or not a roundabout, because I believe geometrically, an engineer can make a roundabout fit. But I think it's important for you to know the operational impact.
Well, I just wouldn't want to see the very busy roundabouts in Europe have lights on them, by the way. So, because if they're very heavily trafficked, as Kerry pointed out, and as many of us have driven on them know, the guy that's on the side street never gets a chance to get out. As you pointed out, so I would, if we have to do a light, I'd rather just do a light if we're never going to get the traffic through there, and that's why I wanted to know if the analysis was
And that's the reason why I feel we need to do a warrant analysis to see if a light is warranted. As an example, typically the first sign that says to a traffic engineer there's a problem is when you have a lot of accidents. Okay, and so one of the things that I did is ask the police department to give accident records. So to give you an idea, going back from January 2000 to current, so 15 years of data, there's been 14 accidents at that intersection. So that's less than 1 per year. We also had the police department take a look at accidents, 500 feet beyond the intersection, thinking that if cars are backing up, it could create more rear ends. Well, the results of that, again, in that same 15-year period, there's been 26. Less than 2 per year. So from an engineering standpoint, we don't see a problem with the operation or safety of that intersection. So Councilmember Weiss, to answer your question, we're not trying to me, we're not trying to solve a problem with a roundabout. It's basically to see whether or not a roundabout fits and what type of operational impact it will have at the current intersection.
Thank you. Well, I think that we've got more ingredients into the mix here with the proposal of the signal light at Los Lomitas. And I think that this is an opportunity to also analyze that. Is that something that we could add to the scope of this consultant's work?
Yes, we could. And so the estimated cost of 25 to 35,000 is gonna.
Would include that?
No,
So it would grow.
it would grow.
But on that, I thought you said that the school district or somebody is already looking at a light to get out of their parking lot, and you indicated you were talking about looking at the cost of analysis of this intersection as well,
Yes,
correct?
that's
Is there any way to combine that for an efficiency so that we can get a contribution that makes for a larger, distance with analysis of several intersections that will give other people sharing the cost?
You can, but again, now the nature of this RFP is starting to change.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we're talking about an operational analysis of a segment of a road
Right.
as opposed to whether or not a roundabout could fit at a specific intersection.
Correct.
So now we're talking about two different, we're talking about apple and an orange here.
I understand, but it seems like irresponsible to just look at one segment of this roadway where we have congestion and issues, and what impacts will it have on other parts of this roadway? And since we've got this other signal being proposed, I think that we really need to look at it more holistically in a larger.
Just on that, you can easily see a scenario where a red light in commute hours backs up traffic into a roundabout, which really just
Clogs it up.
clogs everything all up, it's the end of that. And I found it would be, I think irresponsible is a good word, to look at just the roundabout without considering potential, obviously predictable things like that.
Well,
first, I think the only reason that we ought to be looking at putting a roundabout into this intersection is because there is a problem in terms of traffic being backed up, and that we should only do it if it's going to improve the flow of traffic. If it's not going to improve the flow of traffic, I don't understand why we would do it.
I think we don't know that, and that's why we have to.
I don't have any problem not knowing that and having a study to look at whether or not it would improve the flow of traffic and what the negative operational implications could be. There's two that I'm concerned about. One is exactly what Carrie has identified, which is the traffic on Atherton Avenue, particularly traffic that's westbound on Atherton Avenue, since that's the way I drive. That might be a problem. But no, seriously, there's more traffic that comes up westbound on Atherton Avenue than comes down eastbound on Atherton Avenue. And if there would be a queue that would get along, now sometimes there's, 6 to 8 cars during rush hour, but people are pretty polite with the stop sign and you're able to get in. But if the flow was so rapid, east-west, that or north-south, that the westbound traffic couldn't get out onto the roundabout to get regardless of which way they're going, then that's a problem. And two, the whole issue with the Walsh Road light is a huge problem, and that's not an that's an issue that we have to approve, right? I mean, that's in our jurisdiction, that's our street, our light. The school hasn't asked us, they haven't formally asked us to look at that.
Well, they're working on that.
Well,
Okay, so it makes lots of sense to me that if we're gonna look at this, we really have to look at that too, and they need to help bear some of that cost.
Can I make a point that, going west on Atherton Avenue, if you wanna take a right and go north on Alameda, you don't go into the intersection, you take the little, side merge, lane, right? Which makes it easier to merge into the traffic. It's
But
the left
realistically,
hand.
it's part of the
lane.
intersection, cause
Right.
you wait till, I mean, the people driving,
Right, well, you merge into it
driving north,
as
wait,
that guy's,
you trade off.
going, yeah, making it stop, but.
you know, as a thought, I mean, because again, we're talking about kind of the operations of the whole segment of
Yeah.
Alameda.
Yeah.
And that, you know, one of the things, and Councilmember DeGolia is correct, is that the school district has expressed a desire to signalize that intersection, but it requires the town's approval. And that's why we've commented to them that before we can, you know, decide whether or not, you know, we can recommend to council to approve it, we need this analysis for them to do, which we asked for them to do an analysis of if that were signalized, what impact it would have on the queuing on Alameda. And we also asked them to do an analysis of the Alameda-Atherton intersection as part of their, you know, desire to signalize their driveway, okay? So, you know, so they are already gonna be doing that analysis. The timing of it, I do not know, okay? But, you know, if the council desires, we can wait until we find the results of that analysis, you know, before taking a look at the roundabout. Because I can tell you without any kind of studies that a roundabout is gonna definitely improve flow on Alameda. It definitely will. What I can tell you is how it's gonna impact Atherton Avenue.
Going both, east and west, coming both
Yeah,
directions.
well, actually, right, and the right turn movement that you talked about, to me, that's really not gonna be effective because, as you stated, it requires less of a gap to, you know, to get into that, you know, continue going north, as opposed to the gap required to turn across oncoming traffic to go south.
Well, in a roundabout, you'd be going around, you wouldn't be crossing, you'd be joining the flow in the
Yeah,
roundabout.
but that's the theory behind it. You can
Right.
Get in and go
But-
around or go up or.
But you're trying to go across, you've got heavy flowing traffic in each direction, you gotta get in, so when you get in there, stop, wait
I
for
don't
somebody to
know,
let you in.
it's not like the three.
But would the
It wouldn't be
engineers be
like
able to
in
give us
Massachusetts Avenue,
an
Washington
assessment of that
DC.
issue?
Yes.
You got
That would be useful.
five
Yes, yes.
arterials coming through, okay,
Yeah, but
So-
wait, Madam,
Yes.
you know,
yes,
we do have a general plan constraints, no more than 2 lanes.
we're not asking for that.
I'm just saying.
I understand, thank you, no, I understand, thank you. City
I'm
manager.
sorry, I was just gonna anecdotally give you information, because I drive that route from Alameda every day when I come into work during commute hours. And if I hit brake lights at Polimas, it's about maybe 3 minutes before I can turn left on Atherton Avenue. If I hit brake lights at Polimas, I'm turning left on Polimas and going down Selby and over.
Which is the neighborhood traffic management plan
Right.
issue and everything else is.
So they all kind of interface together.
You cut through our residential streets.
If I can go back to, just to make a point of clarification with Mike, because I'm trying to understand how this all fits together. It seems to me we need to have some strategy to address that stretch of roadway that includes the school and includes, you know, Walsh Road, and certainly includes, I mean, all the east-west roads, most specifically, all of them. And there's got to be a way to look at that and say, here is the logical way to deal with them all. I think we get ourselves in trouble if we do one-off decisions by, we'll do a light here and then see how it affects things here. I'd rather make a one-time decision to tie it together. What is the best way to accomplish that in your view?
I think the best way to accomplish that is more along the lines of what Mayor Lewis was talking about initially, is rather than focusing just at the intersection of Atherton and Alameda, you know, take a look at more of the corridor within the town, you know, basically from Camino al Lago to can't remember, Stockbridge, and to, again, this is a different type of study, a different scope, but basically ask a transportation consultant to take a look at that corridor, to see where, you know, what impacts stop signs or roundabouts would have.
Now we can improve it, because, you know, there's been issues at Stockbridge intersection, you know, because it has that little dip in it. I know we've tried to kind of fix that a little bit. Huh?
It's up on the hill.
Yeah.
That's why we put in the flashing.
Right,
light.
yeah, but, you know, there's left and, anyway, so.
I would
That-
rather see
does-
you do that.
So do we have a consensus? I mean, should we authorize staff to come back to us with some additional numbers, a scope of work?
What we're talking about is that larger scope to address the whole roadway and the impact of stop signs, signals, roundabouts on those particular sections. We can draft that RFP and come back to you with that to send out.
And
Does that
the
sound
analysis
good?
of what that would cost?
Yes.
Because that wasn't in the CIP.
Right.
Yes, with the specific request, we also talked to the school district or whoever others might contribute to that.
And we've already done that, but
Just
yes,
for
we
everything,
will.
it's gonna cost $100,000, of which X is the town percentage, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Is that good?
that's
Yeah.
5 or 4 or?
Shall we, do we need a motion?
No.
Can we all
This
get a
is not
nod
what
or
this
yes?
is. This is some direction.
You're really talking about just continuing.
Well, you're not asking for my advice,
No.
you already heard that, but you got 4, go me.
That's direction.
Yeah, but
But we
this is
do
direction.
need, you know, the thing is,
It's not about consensus. I think that, again, it's frustration.
yes,
Because of the fact that the obvious is that this intersection was largely created for stop signs according to all the neighbors that are over there to get out on Atherton Avenue safely. If you take away that option for people to go now into a roundabout
that's not what we're
location,
saying we're
and
gonna
I'm
do.
not arguing it.
Okay,
You got 4,
thank
you
you.
don't have 5.
All right, well, it's not a full motion, but we do, yeah, okay.
Got it.
And then that just.
But the study is gonna look at all aspects of the traffic, not just,
Not just
Alameda.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna look at the
section.
other end, so you should be happy.
yeah, you really should be.
I should be.
I don't think he had it in there.
This is gonna be Stockbridge to Camino al Lago.
Yeah, boundary to boundary.
And it will include the possibility of a roundabout at this intersection and the impacts that other intersections could have on it and that it could have on other intersections.
Right, together with any analysis that be done by other agencies as part of our full study.
I think
Obviously, that's
I
George
think
and
that's a
Scott
good thing.
through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It will
Let's
include
we're moving on to item number 17, which is our Civic Center project status report. So, gosh, Mike, you are the main man tonight.
You should have your men here.
Yeah.
I should. Again, staff doesn't have any additional information, but we would like city council feedback with regards to the CCAC's recommendations on the exterior building design.
Okay. So I guess everyone has if I could just kind of maybe augment that a little bit, is that okay?
Yes.
The Civic Center Advisory Committee has been very focused on directing the architects to produce elevations and architectural style in the lines of what most of the residents, the feedback we had received from residents in our public outreach meetings, both in the master planning process actually 3 years ago, and then our other public outreach meetings that we had last year in some of the conceptual designs. And that was a more Santa Barbara mission style architectural elevation look, and more residential feel, not massive in size. size, but something that is fitting in the neighborhood. And so they came back with 3 alternatives that I think are part of your packet here tonight, and and the position of the council chambers as it applies to the site plan overall, to be more facing this historic building, kind of the old historic building adjacent to the new council chambers, which was at the, I don't want to say the end, but at the inner courtyard portion of the police department. So that's kind of where we are. It's definitely the Santa Barbara style, and any kind of feedback from council on those elevations. Any comments at this point?
Well, I thought that they
Got better?
They look good. Yeah, they actually got better. And I understand talking to the city manager that, I guess to move the process along, the advisory committee was said, hey, just forget about the budget, just do what you think will look good, which I realize that's maybe a slight exaggeration.
That is a very big example.
That's kind of what you told me. That's kind of what you said, okay?
Well, he paraphrased
However,
quite a lot.
so, and so I am concerned with some of the things that were recommended that seem to be gaining, there seems to be, an additional cost input, and while, hopefully we're gonna get a fair amount of money from, from the item that we talked about earlier,
Yes.
we're gonna get the donations, but looking at the status of the donations,
Right.
and based on where they were even last summer, they seem to be kind of in the same level. And so I'm concerned with the design, and the design like we talked about earlier when we were talking about the net zero. As we make design changes, we won't be able to back out those design changes without delaying the project. And so, and if we're going to have to go with alternative financing, we need to be as conservative as possible on a life cycle cost basis. And the way we're moving forward, we're making decisions, and they're essentially irreversible. I mean, we could choose to redesign everything after it's all done, but that would be, a waste of money, and then also impact. Yeah, and then we would be sitting here and lamenting that we could have had this thing built, but so as I mentioned, I guess when we were talking about some projects earlier, and when we were talking about this project a while ago, I do think that there has to be a trade-off with regards to the cost, especially given the fact of where we are financially and the fundraising. And I'm hopeful that everything is there, but some of the things like copper guttering and the thicker walls that are going to add 10% cost and things like that. Those are
The cost hasn't been, there hasn't been a final cost estimate on it yet.
So there needs to be that trade-off of
Right.
what it's going to look like aesthetically. I also was a little concerned with the roof comment, and again, I haven't seen the top of the roof design, but if we're going to go with the tiling on the roof, of course, they do become more brittle, and to do the solar panels, it takes a little more structural engineering. Well,
Let me clarify on that point. There isn't any proposal to put solar panels on tile.
No, not at all.
The issue was whether to make the roof a tin roof or a tile roof. And the committee decided to make the roof tile as much as possible. The portion of the police piece of the building, a couple feet back where you don't see what the roof looks like, could go flat and could have be positioned for photovoltaic. but you'd still see the red tile overhanging the edge. That's from the courtyard. From the Fair Oaks entrance, the entire roof would be red tile. And so, looking at the building from the train tracks, you'd be looking at the backside across the secured police parking lot. You'd be looking at the backside of the police facility. From that side, you'd see solar panels. There wouldn't be red tile on that side. And they haven't, the architects haven't come back with exactly what that would look like, but that was what the CCAC was recommending.
Okay, that wasn't clear from what I read.
No, it's not.
But I just, again, I'm a little cautious, and it's just because I have not seen the next report that's appended to this shows, based on the input that I got last July and August, essentially not a whole lot of movement.
So I'd like to address that, the fundraising. So it has to be, fundraising is ongoing. The fundraising has not been rolled out to the general public. It's still kind of in the silent phase, if you can say silent phase, when we're talking about it and seeing the report. But also, we have not gotten, we're just now getting to elevations and pictures that can be shown that can resonate with the public. And also the other thing that is being created and we need to approve are the naming conventions to allow for the naming, donor naming rights. And everyone in the fundraising arena feels that we're just right at that critical junction of being able to take the fully blown kind of conceptual schematic design with the architectural features and the naming conventions to the major donors and say, this is what you can be part of. And then the momentum of the fundraising will be accelerated. We're also hosting a public outreach meeting on February 22nd at 5:30 at Jennings Pavilion, where the notion is it's your vision, your future, Atherton's Newtown Center, the design unveiling, so that they can come and see the design and see that all of their input that they've had over the last 3 years has been incorporated into this new civic center project. So with that, we feel that the momentum, I think that I'm very, very confident that we will see significant increases in those donations very shortly. So I really think that, what we need to do as a council is to have that confidence and have that united front so that residents can feel that we are all supporting this project. It has got to be done. It's not a pipe dream. It's not something, a wish list. It's a need that has to be filled. And taking the reins off of the CCAC committee about dealing with budget constraints and saying, let's see what it looks like, and without, because what they had designed was like a bare box that had no charm, no historic, and this is the biggest project that we have in our history, and we're creating something that's going to be around for the next 50 to 100 years, and it has to be done right. It has to be done for the Atherton residents that to want to be part of something like that. So I just feel that anyway. So anybody have to say
Questions or comments?
Yeah.
I'm on
Either
comments.
one.
So, I think that the CCAC group has done a tremendous job. The efforts, I was very pleased when I went stay away from the water line. So item number 1 is too close to the water line as far as I'm concerned. So option number 2 and 3 are still very good options, but I would stay clear of that water line. So as far away as that, better off we are. Because any potential accident in that water line would be very costly. So I think the design with an angle, either one, I think it was just a beautiful job. Just gave us a feeling that it could blend in with the buildings that we have, the archways. So you guys just did a tremendous job at capturing kind of a feel. And as far as the roof line area, and if it works in that direction and it's not flat, and we don't have any problems with it, so it's additional cost, I guess, roughly 10% to consider a change in roof materials. But I think that's, something to, aesthetically, it's attractive to that.
I totally, I agree with everything Carrie just said, and I think we owe a lot of thanks to the people who put a lot of work into this. And then we have managed, I think the design captures an appropriate scope, an appropriate feel, an appropriate size for our town. And, I agree with Carrie. As to the fundraising, there's one point I want to raise this to that, and that is, I think it's great that we are getting a dollars and cents, one piece of paper, here's what's been raised, and I think it's important that we continue to get that, as I know we will, and that will answer itself at some point.
So, one of the things, we cannot ask for donations from the Diaz, or we cannot ask people for donations in person at all. But what we can do as a council to help with the fundraising efforts is to share our vision with our friends and colleagues that may not know what's going on, and if they have the wherewithal or the interest, to put them in touch with the Atherton Now Fundraising Committee. And that's how all of us can be a part of making this a reality and to accelerate the fundraising. So not just sitting back and saying, well, the fundraising group's not doing a good job, but they are working very, very hard, I have to tell you. And the naming conventions that we are going to be asked to approve at some point, once the talk about, yeah, right? When?
Tonight?
It's on the agenda.
Is it? Yeah, but, item 19.
Item 19.
Okay. Oh.
You're providing direction and feedback to the CCAC.
Oh, right, okay, so the thing is that council assignments kind of threw me off.
It's more of a study session conversation versus.
Right,
action.
okay, good, I knew it was there. So anyway, so that's where we are. So, we're going to accept the recommendation of the Civic Center?
It's just, we're soliciting feedback, there's no action necessary. If you have any dramatic changes, we'd like to know that.
Right.
However, because it's on the agenda, you have to ask if anybody in the public wants to comment.
Oh, yes. Would anyone in the public have questions or comments on item number 17, the Civic Center project? Okay.
I just have a very brief comment since I haven't seen the staff report and I don't know what you're looking at. I will say that if the information is that you can see solar panels from the rail side looking at the back of the building, I think that's not going to be a good design because that is the sort of east-south side, and what you really need are solar panels facing the other direction where the sun comes. So I just want to point out that solar panels are clearly sort of an aesthetic issue, but they're also something that has to be designed to be effective. You don't want your solar panels on this side and the sun here and you're not getting any productivity. They need to be there when the sun is like that. So I'm sure the architects are on top of this, but I think that the issue of a tile roof works a little against the aesthetic of the solar panels because they're hard to install on. So that was my only observation from that. And a question as to when can we get to see the design that has come out.
Well, so it's in the, yeah, and we have it posted in the lobby of the
Okay.
center. And then on February 22nd is the design unveiling.
Where's that?
Jennings Pavilion.
But they're in the.
But this is.
But this is,
If you go in for GDS.
In the office?
Yeah, they're right there on that front wall.
Okay. And is this posted on the website?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one comment.
Yes, wait, there's another public comment.
I just want to say that I think that what Atherton is doing here is tremendous. And I was at a county meeting that had, cities from across San Mateo County represented there, and the Atherton Civic Center came up. The meeting was a sustainability meeting that included all the municipalities within San Mateo County, and the Civic Center, the Atherton Civic Center, was brought up as a case study and a project that a lot of folks are looking at. So
Wow.
I just want to really, I love what you said, Mayor Lewis, in terms of the vision and making sure that this vision is communicated out to the Atherton community. And I think that the sustainability nature of it and emphasis on it is one that is really important. And hopefully getting to a net zero is something that is a state standard that's going to be required for new buildings starting in 2020 for residential, 2030, so it's still a ways off for commercial scale. But for Atherton to get ahead of that curve and to be a beacon for others to follow, I think is really something that Atherton can get proud of. And I will say that my wife grew up in Atherton. My mother-in-law still lives over on Fairview Avenue, so we have a big connection to Atherton, even though I personally and my wife now, we live in Menlo Park, but we've got a big connection here.
Great, tell your mom about it.
Yeah, I will. And we're all really proud of what's happening here as we've learned about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Okay, and you have another
I
comment?
just have one comment, which is, one of the architectural preference comments that is in the staff report has to do with the windows and whether the windows will be operable. And, in the summer, I open up all of my second-story windows every single night in order to bring in cold air and load the weight of the building so that it retains that cool quality during the day and minimizes the need for electricity. And I know that that is part of the design here. So I actually feel quite strongly that we need all of these windows to be operable that are safe to open and that will be helpful in managing the costs of operating the building. And the whole purpose of trying to increase our energy efficiency is not, to be politically correct. It's to manage our costs on a total cost of ownership basis, so that once we've built this building, our costs of operating the building are reduced because of our intelligent design. And the operable windows are a big piece of that. So when I look at this, there are lots of trade-offs that you can see that the CCAC is dealing with in terms of budget and design. Thicker walls, red tile roofs versus a tin roof, which was considered, which is much cheaper. And operable windows are one of those. And the operable windows both will improve the efficiency of the building and reduce the cost, but I think it's also an important quality of life issue for the staff. One of the things in this building is that we have the opportunity to build something that is going to be attractive to our staff and that we will use in order to hire and retain the top quality staff that we have and will have access to. And I feel very strongly about this particular element.
Any other comments, questions?
No, it's one of the things that's on the list that we're supposed to be thinking about in the next month, right?
Yeah, it's definitely on the list, and for me, it's a priority.
Okay. All right. So, the next item is item 18, committee council assignments. I did receive your request to remove from that. Understand your time commitment not allowing you to go to that meeting. Any
all over.
You're very welcome.
It's tough to do that, and we're all with different schedules, and I know how much of a problem all our schedules are going in, and we all wanna do everything, but
Right.
you've gotta make plans.
Well, the thing is, it was hard, but it was easy because so many of your assignments are similar to what you have been working on, and I firmly believe that every one of us is pulling our weight in our special areas of expertise. Your work on the SBA board is really outstanding and valuable, as you relayed tonight about the audit, because I didn't know about that, so thank you. And so other committees and commissions, your work on transportation and fire board, Carrie, your work on transportation and rail and everything, so we're all pulling. It's not just a one-man show, so thank you.
Bill, you're doing great work on trash.
You're so trashy.
It's a complex thing, so
Yes,
jokingly,
trashy.
he knows, I mean, he's been chair, so he's coordinating, we're talking about roadway closures, concerned about lakes. It's a lot of effort, so I commend Bill because I co-live with him, and he makes me look like I just started.
We like to keep the rates low.
Madam Mayor, do you have any assessment for municipal traffic congestion lines?
Well, I was on it for several years, and I was vice chair of it before our former mayor bumped me and put this man. Did I complain?
Yes, as a matter of fact, you just did.
Well, the problem is, I have to tell you, I think is they have it at 8 o'clock in the morning in San Mateo, Thursday after council meeting. So it's brutal. Yeah.
That's
another reason to get done by 8:30.
That's a reason why you're
There you
not.
That was all for tonight, wasn't it?
Okay, well, we're almost there. Okay.
So are you taking that replacement?
Do I have any volunteers? Peninsula Congestion Relief Alliance?
Everybody speak up all at once.
Replace, Councilman Woodward?
There you go. I'm busy that Thursday morning, whatever it is.
Who's the alternate?
Mr. Lumpers.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it,
Consistency. I'll back you up.
Okay.
All right.
There you go.
What a team player.
Sweet.
Yeah, he's a real sportsman. Okay, thank you. That's good, thank you.
That's Lampress and Lewis.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Thanks for your consideration.
All right, so naming conventions, George.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This isn't a Mike Kashiwagi report, so it's been a Mike show all evening. You've seen this report before. I think I've sent information like this out. The Civic Center Advisory Committee was asked by the council to look at naming conventions, and they provided the attachment via Appleton Now to this staff report. And basically what they're looking for is, what is the council's idea with respect to naming opportunities within the Civic Center? I labeled the report naming conventions because I didn't think we wanted to get into naming that room, this room, or what levels would be, but you can certainly give that kind of feedback. What the CCAC is more looking for is, yes, it's okay to name rooms. Yes, it's okay to name garden spaces and outdoor spaces. Street names are okay, or street names aren't okay. We don't want anyone to name the public safety building, that sort of conversation. So that's what we're looking for from the council this evening, is to provide that feedback. And then Appleton Now can then go out and say, we've got this direction as a donor, you're gonna contribute funds, we give you this opportunity at this level. You still have the ability to accept or not accept that donation if there's a request for a naming of that competition.
Which is not on.
So anyway, that's the conversation we're asking the council this evening.
So, for, just a little add-on to that, the names, the items that are in the grids are really for, larger donors, pretty much. And then there's the paragraph at the bottom, benches, bricks in honor of, and then we have, those are the more like for, the at-large donors, I think. If I say it that way.
any legal issues here that we should be aware of, and there's no?
I mean, this type of, promotion or offering is done all the time. And there's been, lots of thought, that have gone into it, from the Atherton Now, committee, with, the consultant for them, and her expertise, and culling from other, projects in the area where, from schools and hospitals and, not many civic centers have been really, built in this area like this, but,
Well, we've got Portola Valley.
oh, that's right,
And
but
Portola Valley,
had,
they didn't exactly name buildings, but they did put plaques on a couple buildings that indicated substantial donation from individuals.
and one of the other thoughts is that is still being kicked around is a donor wall in, maybe the lobby of the, civic center. Similar to, there's one in one of the Palo Alto Medical Clinic, the dermatology building.
There is a Stanford Hospital.
And there's a giant wall with donor names and, stones and things, different sizes.
Yeah, I think having a common place and not having names all over the place and little plaques all over the place, but having a common one, I think would be very, very tasteful. I think that if you're gonna name like conference rooms, like, in the police department building,
No,
there's
they're not.
okay, because,
There's nothing in
you
the
wouldn't
public
want,
safety.
yeah, you wouldn't
Nothing.
wanna be going into
No,
a room
absolutely.
with maybe a complaint or something, and then
No,
you find out
no.
that, hey, the guy you're complaining about
So
owns
there's,
the building,
there's,
right?
there's
Oh.
no,
But if you look
But,
at
okay, so
the
my,
list,
so
it's
my,
got
okay,
It's got-
safety.
well, so my thoughts are, having,
I know,
There's a policeman, yeah.
the policeman, that should not have been there.
so, anyway, I think having a donor wall or a major plaque, I think is a good idea versus naming individual rooms. And, I mentioned to George, I think there was a question on maybe a roadway or whatever. I would like to suggest that we consider having the historical group, Marion Oster, to identify 2 or 3 key individuals in our history who have played a big role and honor those people. Similar to the way the streets are named here, that, most of the streets are named after somebody who had a place in history.
Can they make a big contribution?
Well, probably not. Probably not. But I think that that's what, as opposed to giving it out to,
It would not be giving it out.
well, so.
It would not be giving it out.
Well,
So the
recognizing
goal
people.
here is to raise money.
I understand that, but
And there is, I think they've, identified, maybe, some key donors who would really appreciate that opportunity.
I would rather see their name on a big name on a plaque, along with smaller names that maybe didn't give as much as them. And naming a street after them or something like that, because buying the street versus earning it being named after you or your family member are 2 different things.
I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time talking about this with these different committees, so, I can give a little bit of perspective. I actually think, personally, I think the idea of a donor wall where, big donors are at the top, smaller donors are at the bottom, and it gets graduated like you see in lots and lots of places. conversation that I've heard is that it makes sense not to name any rooms in the police facility, and maybe no rooms in the admin facility, like the council chambers, for any individual donation. But maybe if you had in the library where you've got 3 small rooms, you were to dedicate them to significant Atherton residents or admin residents like Willie Mays or Ty Cobb or Joe Montana or Gertrude Atherton or somebody who would be associated with Atherton. If somebody wants to make a donation that would help enable that, then there could be a plaque that would say this room was made available by XYZ. And not to name the room after the donor. I think personally I would feel good about that. I know that the whole issue of where we stand with the donations has been painful because we're dependent on public donors to fund this, the non-library portion of the Civic Center. And the idea of these streets, I mean, there are a couple big names in the area, Sobrato and Arrialgo, come right out, and all you have to do is walk through Menlo Park or Portola Valley where people have made donations and they have names that are dedicated, buildings that are dedicated to them, at Stanford as well as in Menlo Park anyway. And if one of them were to come and say, I'll give you $10 million if you'll name this piece of the street from Ashfield to Fair Oaks, personally I feel like we would need to consider that because that's 50% of what we need to raise going forward. Nobody's made that offer.
But we
But I
haven't
don't-
offered it to them either.
Okay, but yeah, and I don't think it's our role to offer it to them, but I think it's
not
proper
our
for us to
role,
have a
it's
public
the
discussion
Now
about it.
committee, it's the fundraising
Yeah.
committees.
But personally, I would feel okay about that. I mean, I guess I'd like to talk to you all about that and see what you all think. You would definitely we'd be selling it, essentially, right? I mean, somebody does a big donation, but that's kind of what happens.
Everybody does.
I mean, I've seen libraries named after people. I wouldn't want to name our library after somebody or our council chambers after somebody, but there are libraries that are named after people.
Just specific to the library, one of the issues that at least comes up to me is that that's public funded, right? So it seems awkward that someone's going to contribute money to a civic center and we are then going to name a room after, hypothetically a room, after them in a building that was separately funded by public funding, as opposed to, I'm going to give money for this room, whatever, the cafe or just whatever, some room somewhere that's going to get built. Respond next. First time really.
The conversation on that has been all of the funding's going to a common goal. The library funds, which are tax dollars that we've all paid, are going to that common goal. Those dollars are paying for the library, but they're going to a common goal, total cost of which is about $42 million. And if somebody makes a donation of, $1 million for the Willie Mays conference room in the library, then that money goes into the pot. So yes, it defers what else you have to raise from the public.
But there's no specific link between the contribution
and that's always true. That's right. There's no specific link.
So, if I can chime in a little bit. I will say that I think that every donor should have a brick, and I think it should be consistent with how we've done it over at the park. I think that's just one good way to say, I just had a friend of mine 40 years ago, his father laid bricks at Stanford. A few weeks ago, he found his brick at Stanford. The entire family made a trip to go over there and uncover the brick that they had taken photos. And I think that that's something that every family member that contributes to something, to be part of something, and this is the biggest thing that we're doing. I think it would be just a great way to do exactly what we're trying to do, is bring people in. experience a little bit of what we all have tried to create or what we will ultimately create. I think that an honorary wall of people that live in Atherton that people can watch and be able to be updated, because who knows who will be here in the future, but this facility as it is, there are a lot of people that have given a lot to this town, that getting on that wall would just be something that they could say, gosh, you know, I made it on the wall, Willie Mays being one of them, would just be a bonus as an attractive point for people to come in and say as they're walking around. Benches, this and that, I think that that's a pretty easy thing to say. Absolutely. There are people that will donate to something that they really believe in, and one of which may be sitting in a rose garden or sitting in an area and a chair and a bench. You know, these are little easy gifts that we can give to people that are giving us the gift of money. The naming of a library wall, I will agree that this particular component doesn't have that dollar figure, but there may be somebody that's very generous and has done an incredible amount of effort in the big picture, and maybe learning and education and that tool is something that they would love to say, hey, you know, my family is really behind the library. I'd love to give you $100 million for the library and everything else, but not using that number, but I wish that would happen. But if somebody did that, you know, that would be a nice way to say, if I believe in something, because there's people that believe in a certain thing, will not donate to anything else, but they believe in learning and the education and kids and tools. So that item for just whatever that fund is, that could be cleared, I guess, it has to be done tastefully, and it has to be, you know, the right match, I guess. And maybe it's that, you know, letter of content, why do you want to donate to the library, and why is that important to you? And maybe that's something that we can take into consideration while we're making the decisions to name something. It's not just your money, it's a big thing for us to give away the name of a building. And in perpetuity, I think that would be something, considering all the naming of buildings, that the attachment of why do you want to donate to the civic center, why do you want to donate to the police department? You know, what's your reasoning, so that when we're making this decision, we'd love to be able to honor that in some ways, put it in maybe in a plaque portion. This is why my family believed I was X, and I really been an advocate supporter of the police department for X. So helping us make these decisions, which I think are big, and roadways are a harder thing to make a decision on, because we don't have a whole lot. Some of these are named after people that frankly have come and gone, and to give away a name, to create a name, and they're still alive, or are they not? How is that decision going to be made? I know people that live on a certain street want to name their own street after them, but who really wants to? And I don't know, but maybe that's something we would consider if that crossed us at some point, because I think we really do have a group of people that are out there trying to figure these things out, and I think that our goal is success, and success will not happen without the money, and the generosity that are coming from our people in this town. If it takes a library, if it takes a police department or a civic center or a garden area, and we can make it, you know, we only finish this race if we get to the end of the road. So money's going to make it happen. So
on the streets. Let me just clarify. I don't think anybody's wanting to take any existing street names away, like Dinkelspiel. You know, that would, you know, pretty much stay. But it's like there's a new portion where Ashfield, what we're doing is Ashfield comes, and instead where it turns to go to Fair Oaks, that's kind of a new little section. Okay, so Ashfield would come from El Camino down to where the residences stop, and then it becomes this other new little civic center road. And then there's a little road passway in front of the civic center where there's some convenience parking. Remember, we've always talked about having convenience parking in front for residents to pop in and out easily, to go to the post office, to go to the permit center real quickly. So that's another little newly created portion that a donor could and have their name. So it's not taking anything away from anybody that's existing. You know, it's like filling in the blank there.
yeah, I mean, personally, I think that when it comes to a civic center and roadways, they're often the same road. Police Drive, Library Way, Civic Center Drive. You know, we want them to come here and, you know, lanes that may be named after people.
There are lanes all over the place, that are named after people, you know.
Civic Center relative.
Yeah, well, no, Emily, Alejandra,
No, not
you
just-
know, they're daughters of our founders.
No, that's not, the
Jackson.
point being, when it's a civic center, a lot of times you're trying to get people to it. If you say, you know, Police Civic Center Way, I now know that I'm going towards the
Yeah,
civic
oh my
center.
gosh, we're.
But,
yeah,
again,
we're-
you know,
yes.
But a couple of thoughts. One, to me, and I think you've identified this in the roads, there's a difference between a road, again, that's part of the civic center. We're building a project and there's a parking strip in front as part of the project. To me, that's different than a road that actually takes people other places and is part of the public, not specific to this project. And my other thought on this is, you can really get yourself in trouble if people go out and offer, you know, someone says, I want to spend X many millions of dollars, and we end up coming back later and say, well, we can't accept that. So I don't know how we get to that. All of these things could make
Why
meaning.
would we not be able to?
Because if somebody says, I want my name on the library, or unsolicited somebody from Matthew Allen says, you get your name on the library for X, and then we come back and say, no, you can't do that. What I don't see here is any sense of order of magnitude of gifts that would permit a naming. And that's really important, because all of these are public, you know, places. And it's really I think it's gotta be a significant, contribution to permit the naming of these things. I don't know what the process will be, so that we don't irritate a donor or, create problems for ourselves. But a big half of this equation is how much do they get and how much is this contribution.
Right.
Well,
And that's kind of the finesse of it all.
But I mean, to give a pump, I would wanna be comfortable that, I would be bad if all these things got named and we raised, nothing. If somebody came in and said, I'm gonna give it all, they would say, okay, that's one name, one big name, that makes sense, that's fundamentally different.
I don't think anybody would want to have one big name on our civic center.
Somebody kind of formed.
But ultimately,
We don't need 40
I
names.
know.
but ultimately, the final decision's us anyways, and so with that decision, if somebody says, and this may, $5 for the naming of the civic center, we would look at that like, I'm sorry, but whatever it is, we would know because we'd be approached with it, and it doesn't make sense to name the facility.
Right.
That's just not enough to, the contribution would have to be reasonable.
There are 1,600 Carnegie libraries in the United States of America, and the only requirement was that they had to put Carnegie Library on it, and he paid for the whole thing.
That's true to some degree. If it's a $5 donation, Atherton now is gonna take the money and they might give them a break or something. Whatever that dollar amount is, you'll never see that. That'll be contributed to the town, just say here's $300,000 as part of the contributions we've received thus far. And they could have been promised a brick or a name on a donor wall, and you won't see that at all. So, but I've got a list here that maybe I could help add some finesse to the conversation.
Well, let me just say that we have, 4 $1 million gifts.
Yeah.
And there have not been any naming rights associated to this.
And that's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're looking for
Yeah.
the bigger ones, especially for the college.
I just happen to know colleges actually have lists. If you give X, you get Y.
Yeah.
I mean, it's transparent.
And that's kind of what I did
It's
not
very
talk
good
about.
Yeah, there you go.
From this conversation.
Well, yeah, maybe that's the answer. If we had a list of numbers attached to it, we could say, yeah, that's what's reasonable.
Well, I thought your comment about anybody who gives any money, okay, other than tax dollars, for going into the library. I will give this every taxpayer. That would be sweet, but.
Wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they should. But anyway, but I agree with your idea. Everybody is donating. You should have at least have a break.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It'd be a long list, but there'd be some repetitiveness. But everybody gets some sort of thing, and it would be an attractive thing, maybe in a little plaza out by where the cafe would be, things like that, and people would want to come see it. I guess really, if we could know the number and then decide whether or not we're having
The
flags
value.
everywhere, are we gonna have just a donor wall? I think that the comment about a donor wall is really good.
Yeah.
And some people are gonna have large fonts and other people are gonna have.
Well, and you know, and so that might be a way to finesse, the contributions to people, say specifically for the police, because there are people literally that want to support the police development, but if there's in the lobby, in the collaborative lobby we have, the joint lobby of police and planning and admin, that the wall, you know, there may be flanking walls, and that on the police side wall, maybe the big donor plaques might be for that, and over here, the admin wall. I mean, architects have to design that up, but just thinking about that, because I think the feeling is that, at least my perspective, is that we don't wanna take a contribution and name the police, department after that.
No, because people would think that then they would.
Preferential treatment.
As is come up
With the dogs or whatever they want,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
And even
that'll be stuff.
training rooms or conference rooms or things, you know, just what you were saying.
That's-
So that discussion has been had, and so, but,
But I think if we give that Atherton now as that framework,
Yeah.
then they can develop what an a la carte menu might look like within that framework to bring back. So maybe I could go through that
Yes.
list. And all I'm looking for maybe is a, hey, this is an okay contribution, but it's a really big one, or we really don't care, you can get a brick for $10 if you want a brick, we really don't care. But this is a big thing, and
but we
it needs to have a high dollar amount to it.
$10.
Right, or this area is not okay to name, or we're open to discussing it, depending on how much you're contributing. So I've got like 8 things to go through. So how about rooms within the PD and admin building? Is that like,
Don't combine them.
all right, rooms within the police department? Rooms.
Well, I thought we just said
I
we were
just said
gonna
no.
recognize with big letters on the donor wall, but not necessarily name the rooms, I thought is what we said.
Right, that's what I'm looking for. No, we don't really want rooms.
No
named.
rooms.
I think that, for any of the rooms, it would be, I would prefer not to name a room after a donor. But if there's a plaque in a room that says that this room was, made possible by the generous donation of X, I mean, where I've contemplated that is are rooms in the libraries that you could structure around a personality who has a lot to do with Atherton. And the reason I think about that in the library versus the admin building is the library will be open on the weekends, and parents could bring their kids to come see the Willie Mays room.
It's like the
and
Hall of
go in
Fame or the Legends of
or
Atherton.
the Legends of Atherton
Right.
room. And that, that's an attractive thing to our residents. I think it provides them the
Educational.
service. It makes an interesting piece of the library. It uses that information from the Heritage Association.
But he asked for admin and.
No, I understand, so I'm just explaining that in the police and admin building, maybe you'd have a conference room. I don't know, I don't really like the idea in the police
No.
part, because you don't want to have an association with safety services and individual donations.
You could have the same conflict of interest.
Out of sheer curiosity, are
And,
there any
in the admin
Planning your
building
building.
too, yeah, and so I don't think in admin, places where justice might be served or decisions might be made, I just don't think that that's appropriate.
Can I ask the chief one question? In your years of experience in all police departments you've walked through, have you ever seen any naming inside police departments related to rooms?
I don't recall right
Makes-
offhand.
Makes it simple.
Yeah.
Does the San Francisco,
Thank you, chief.
police department have a name? I mean,
Must
Hall of
not be-
Justice
no.
or anything, but something Hall of Justice.
I don't know, but.
I think that if you have one on the outside, I think that the chief's kind of said it, and I think that there is a sentiment that it might be inappropriate to be inside.
Okay.
And I think that if you've got
So
healthy
PD's
donors.
enough.
Guys,
Rick's
it's
point is that
like-
it's,
I said,
I'm sorry, but Rick's point is that if a plaque in a room, like you described, is acceptable to people, that, to me, is far preferable. I don't know if it does the trick for Atherton now, but.
How about a plaque in the entry that says, if you've made it past this wall, you'll understand that the room over here to the left was by X
Well, I'll get the plaques and the entry in a second. These are just segments, naming conventions, so rooms within the police department.
No.
No, rooms within the administration area or planning and building.
I don't know.
Conference rooms, meeting rooms.
Lobby, reception.
Lobby's
We don't
different.
have rooms. We have 2 conference rooms, or 3 conference rooms.
Well, the inside configuration might change and the numbers might change, so I'm just
But
asking,
not
is it okay to name a
offices or
conference?
anything.
No,
I would think the lobby, yes.
yeah, and
Lobby, yes,
is
and the cafe, yes.
How about within the library, meeting rooms within the library, those are often named, or,
Yeah.
okay?
Yes.
If there was a level and then they also facilitized it, I mean, that's one of the things, we have to find people that are actually gonna buy the furniture that goes in there.
Do you want some reaction as to magnitude, level?
Yes, if this is a high dollar number or a low dollar, you don't really care.
I think high dollar,
I think
at
we
at
need
this
to give it
level
to-
of actually naming a room or, I don't know, whatever else is on your list, we're probably at the $1 million level, I would think.
I think we need to let Atherton now, come back.
With a number,
With the
it's a
numbers.
big number, not a
Okay.
small number.
Oh, no, none of these are small numbers.
Right, okay.
The small numbers, like I said in my
It's more than a
preamble,
million that people
was
are-
the bricks and the benches and the.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about that.
I know, but he says.
So, how about interior road segments? Those are big numbers, and
Big.
you want that to come to the council?
Yes.
What about garden plazas and outdoor spaces?
I think definitely garden and outdoor spaces.
Right, those are easy to name
Yes,
those spaces.
definitely.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
benches and.
Right.
Public areas, like you mentioned, the lobby spaces and things like that, can this lobby brought to you by Joe Smith?
Well, I think we were gonna have major donation walls in there, then you don't wanna.
Cloud it up with a name.
Yeah, I mean, their name will be at the top, okay, they wanna give $1.5 million.
So the lobby spaces are more for donor walls and recognition spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth, interestingly enough, I was in Clark Hall yesterday, and I almost took a picture of that wall.
Oh, yeah.
And at the top, there are 3 major donors, and the plaque size covers the
They're
whole
big,
wall.
yeah.
And underneath it, the smaller donors get, small, progressively smaller all the way down, but it's very impressive.
Yeah,
And it's in a building, by the way, it's named after a guy named Clark, interesting.
yeah, Dr. Clark, I knew him well.
How about naming the council chambers?
No.
Not even considered, okay? Naming of buildings themselves?
Yeah.
No.
No?
Yeah.
Atherton Town.
Well, I think that you gotta I don't know, I think you gotta consider the option. There may be people that
That wants to.
contribute to a certain thing. It could be the big building, the big police department. A huge police department supporter, I would hate to say that you couldn't have a plaque on the outside of somebody that supported the police department for 50 years here and wanted to make a considerable
Carrie, are
donation.
you gonna stop?
Well, the library is another building, it's a building.
I said,
Not in favor.
So my general consensus here then is, not really.
No.
Okay. How about building systems? These photovoltaic panels brought to you by,
If the plaque is up on the
Okay.
fence, sure, no
Open
problem.
air.
I think that's something that we should think about.
Okay.
Absolutely.
so what I have is, you don't really wanna name the rooms in the police department, interior. You don't really wanna name the rooms in the police department, in the admin building, planning, works, et cetera. The library, yeah, and you could certainly talk about doing that and having them be team rooms as well. Interior road segments, yeah, you consider that, but that's gotta be kinda big, and that you want to see before you agree to the grant or donation. Gardens, plazas, outdoor spaces, yeah, certainly, depends on the scope and the size and the scale, and Atherton now can develop that à la carte menu of what that ranking is, but you'd have to see that. Public areas in any building, those spaces are more for recognition and donor walls at any level, but they could be, big plaque, small plaque, that sort of thing.
Well, but we don't wanna have it tacky.
Right, it's gotta
Okay,
look-
I mean, you can have a plaque everywhere, we'll be walking on plaques.
I hope so.
Donor walls, benches, and
I
bricks.
really hope
That's
so.
what, that's what we go with bricks.
Yeah, donor walls, benches, and bricks, yeah, that's certainly doable. Atherton now can develop a scope and an à la carte menu, you'd like to see that as well. Naming the council chambers, no way. Naming buildings, no way. Building systems, sure. And that's about it. Does that make sense?
So when you said coming back to us, was there anything that doesn't, any big ticket item that doesn't come back to us?
A bench.
That's not a big ticket item.
Benches, oh.
Could be a big
Well, wait, I thought
Nicknames.
want a road building named after him, we said no, but hey, if
Well,
somebody
that's-
makes an offer, we'll talk about it.
That's where who makes that decision, because unless there's a dollar figure, you don't know what your, what, you know, okay, what your threshold is. So I don't know
You're
what we
starting to
set
run
our
into your own
criteria.
public agency guidelines. You have to be careful, because if somebody wanted to make a donation, is it gonna be, is it gonna be a collective decision that, oh, we don't like that person? If somebody, if you have a number and they come in and meet that number, I will tell you right now, you're probably gonna, unless they're out on bail or probation, you're gonna be required to not use artificial constraints to prohibit somebody of an ethnic or racial or whatever background, because if you make that mistake, they will consider it, that you have used invalid criteria. So I would be careful, if you're gonna say, if somebody gives $20 million, they can name that street, then that's the bottom line, is unless their name is something, you know, unless they wanna name it something offensive, it's not their name, you have to be careful with that.
But I don't think they're asking whether they would see who's contributing, are you? I think you're saying,
The name?
Atherton now has a donor that wants to
Yeah.
contribute $10 million, but they would like the street named after them.
But
What
if
do you
they
think?
name
If
it
we're
after
down 5
themselves,
or
you have
8
to be careful with that.
You know,
If it's the Ames Road or the Johnson Road, and you all go, oh, wait, that guy's got a seedy history in the town. Problem is if you've thrown it out there for naming rights, you can name it after your family or your business if you pay the money. Unless you wanna have criteria, it can't be a family name, it can only be a business name, or the other way around. You can do that in advance, but I wouldn't wait till it comes back to you and then apply subjective criteria that holds you out to litigation.
so we should, we should evaluate it and talk with Atherton now about, you know, what that,
The criteria.
threshold and the
Yeah.
criteria is gonna be, okay?
Definitely.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, I get that.
Anything else?
No.
So, did we provide you enough direction?
You did, I'll take that back to the Civic Center Advisory Committee in kind of a consensus format and ask that Atherton now develop a à la carte menu of price contribution ranges that you can see again.
Okay. All right, that's all of our agenda. We have no council reports.